Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Pizza Punk. Now, this is rather exciting. I have to tell you, this is really exciting for me. And it's partially I'm going to just do a little intro. I don't know when I first heard about the Manimals, probably, in tandem generally, and I think this is not true for everybody, but, usually you listen to one band and then another band bleeds through. For me, I was a fan of the Misfits and, I was looking through and I saw, oh, the Misfits did shows with this band called Manimals. Wow, they're like kinda like it's like they're kinda like the other side of the coin here. Well, who's this guy, Larry the Wolf? And he's got this weird mane that he puts on. Like, it's crazy. Like, what is this? What is this? And they put out an EP called Blood. It's either Blood of the Harvest or Blood is the Harvest. Forgive me for my trepidation and wording here. Point is, it's a killer little, it's like an EP mini album. I've heard it referred to as sort of like both. And about 10 years ago, I took a stab at writing my very first screenplay. And it was about lycanthropy, whatever. It was about werewolves. And I decided to name the main character of my story, Larry the Wolf, after Larry the Wolf from Manimals. It just felt right. Now, in turn, Larry the Wolf is a spin on, Lawrence Talbot, right? Talbot from the werewolf, from the Wolf Man from 1941 with Lon Chaney Jr. But the point being is that I was like, my character, he's gotta be called Larry the Wolf. It's sort of like a little wink about this band. And on his knuckles, tattooed was it was he I think he had how did he had it was like Larry and Wolf, but it was I don't know. Somehow the letters all worked out, but he was going to have Larry and Wolf somehow on his knuckles. That was the plan. In any case, fast forward very recently, Larry and I have been in contact, and I was so happy when he said that he was going to come on the show and talk shop. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're not just here to talk about one thing in particular. And not only that, this really shocked me more than anything. I was not expecting Larry to transform, but I guess somewhere, how they say it's like always like 5 o'clock somewhere when you want to drink wine whenever you want. Somewhere out there, there's a full moon. And I guess somewhere tonight there was a full moon because Larry is not a man. He is the wolf. Welcome to the show. A big welcome to the show to Larry, the mother effing wolf. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Thank you for having me. Do I sound excited?
You sound super excited. I got to tell you, I love that makeup, man. I was so happy to see you wearing your face, wearing your actual face, your real visage.
This is the real me. I hate to break it to you.
That is the real you. So tell me, let's start there. Actually, I want to talk a little bit about your makeup scheme and where did the inspiration come from, and how did you come about that specific? Because that is a very specific makeup. It really is singular to you, and it's like some people, they can do a whole thing on their face, but you're like it's like you use your makeup to accentuate and not intensify.
I thank you, Jeff. And first of all, thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. I just text or sent you an email how much I enjoyed your recent talk about Lou Reed Berlin.
We're going to talk about
that tonight.
We will.
I love that you referenced Lon Chaney and the Wolf Man. My initials are LC, like Lon Chaney. I was a kid that grew up, of course, monster kid of the 60s, early 70s, on Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, Aurora Monster models, Marvel comic books, and all that. And and the Munsters on TV, Batman, all that great stuff, Marvel, Marching Society cartoons, Spider-Man. And I never thought about music. I played sports growing up. And of course, I was one of those, but I always loved music because I loved Elvis. And so I think it was probably, I was one of those dumb kids that gave all my money to Kiss about 75 through about 79. and I, of course, and I, you know, so I was very influenced by it. But my first aspirations was to either be something in pro wrestling or be an actor like Lon Chaney Sr., Man of a Thousand Faces, not Junior. You know, loved him as well. But that was really something I was very. I read all those famous Monsters magazines when I was a kid, and Florrie Ackerman and James Warren would put out with Lon Chaney's makeup kit, and he could transform himself from Quasimodo to Eric the Phantom to the guy with the bad eye in West of Zanzibar to the guy with missing legs in The Penalty. You know, I just thought that would all work together somehow. You know, I saw Gene Simmons as a kid. I thought, okay, he likes a lot of the same stuff I do. Horror movies, Lon Chaney can kind of play pretty well. The songs are rock and roll. But I didn't want to go out and be like Kiss or something like that. So really all I did was accentuate my own features. If you put a flashlight on my face, it's my face.
It's really effective. It really, really, like, it's a really effective makeup because it's just not, you know, I mean, you look at Kiss is like full on everything over the top, like, you know, covering the whole face. And this is like the reverse of Kiss. It's just a hint. It does what it needs to do. And then it just, you know, it's not overbearing, you know, and I like that. Well,
thank you. And one of the things also was I was pointed out early on when I first started doing this, developing it. Someone said you look more like Oliver Reed in Curse of the Werewolf, which that's not as good a movie as the original, Werewolf from London with Henry Hull or The Wolfman with Lon Chaney. But the makeup is fantastic on Oliver
Great
Reed.
Makeup.
It's a spectacular makeup, and it really, you can see it's Oliver Reed, and that's what I wanted. You can still see it's me.
That is a fantastic Hammer film. Very recently, Hammer was a blind spot for me for a long time. And I finally, bit the bullet. I got one of those box sets and of course it has Curse of the Werewolf in it. And, you know, spoilers on a 70-year-old something movie, either a 60-year-old movie, you don't get a lot of werewolf until the very end, but they keep it very interesting. And, you know, the thing about Oliver Reed, he's just he's actually in a bunch of those Hammer movies, and he's such a magnetic actor. I mean, even just look at him in Oliver Twist, man. Oh my God, is he good in that role?
There's a spectacular film with him. It's very disturbing called The Devils by Ken Russell.
Seen it.
You've seen that? Mm-hmm. And he's the corrupt Monsignor or whatever it is, Archbishop, and he's fantastic in it.
It was banned for many years. It was banned for many years. And then finally it came out. I saw it on Shudder, had it, which is a great streaming service.
Jeff, I love that you know that film.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know I am, you know, as much as I love music and I'm kind of like a music nerd, I'm a filmmaker, and I love cinema, and I love films, and I love old films too, man. I watch it all. I've actually really started educating myself on like some noir stuff, and like, what did I watch? I watched this Halloween. I always try to watch new stuff on Halloween. I watched the very first Wax Museum film from 1932.
Oh, Lionel Atwill.
Yes. Yep. Yes. And that, I got to tell you, man. And you know what's great about watching those old movies is, like, you know, it takes you to this different time and place, and it's like, I don't know. It's like another layer of being transferred into a different world, because not only are you in the fictional story, but you're in a fictional story that's being told from another time and another mindset, right?
Yes. And as I recall, that movie is shot in like a 2-process early color.
Yes.
And Fay Wray is also in it.
Yeah, Fay Wray is in it. And yes, that was an early, wow. Yes, that was a 2-color process I think it was before Technicolor like officially made its debut with Wizard of Oz, right? I think so.
I believe so.
And
Gone with the Wind the same year, I think, both 1939.
Right. Which I mean, the two biggest innovations, and I don't know if you've seen, and you have to see if you haven't seen it. Have you seen Babylon?
I have not.
You would love it. You would love it because it kind of, I mean, it talks about it really, it shows the shift from silent films into talkie films. It's kind of like, you know what it's kind of like? It's kind of like in the same way that like Boogie Nights doesn't actually, it's based on real stuff, but it's a
Mhm.
fictionalized story. This is all based on real stuff from the 20s and 30s, but it's like a fictionalized version of it, you know?
Is this the Margot Robbie movie that's out now?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, with Brad
Okay.
Pitt.
Yes.
Check it out. You got to see it. I don't want to say anything about it. Just that as a fan, if you're into this stuff, and as I can see you're into this stuff, you will have a deep appreciation for that. Another film that you kind of, so your character kind of reminds me of this too a little bit, in my opinion. This is kind of like my own hot take. You tell me what you think of this. In a weird kind of way, I think the first, all the universal cycle, but in general, the monster cycle thematically is
Mhm.
always about like Beauty and the Beast, right? Like like a monster and like a lady, and the monster's actually human inside, and it's people who are the evil monster, right? That sort of overarching theme.
Are you going to reference the French Jean Cocteau, Beauty and the Beast, La Belle or La
Yeah,
Bête?
man. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yep.
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 That an image of them was almost on the back of this Studies in Scarlet CD. That was in the drawing board, but we pulled it for my friend Argyle came up with a better alternative using the Oliver Reed eyes.
That is my that is like, it's not my favorite movie, but like it's like I adore this film. Adore it. Love
I'll
it so
tell you
much.
a secret. A long time ago, I had a film minor. And the other thing is, we can talk about some other time, but I spent about 10 years in and out of independent films and a few major films.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, so
Phew.
you know your stuff. I got John of Doom here. He's saying, does Larry know if Lon Chaney really used chicken wire behind his eyeballs to make them bulge out for Phantom?
Not that, I'm not sure that that's so. I know he used something. I thought it was some type of, I thought he used spirit gum to hold it back, but I'm not sure. But
And he
that's
also,
one of those things. I don't know if it's an urban legend or true that he used wire or something in his nose to flare the nostrils and push it up.
I mean, he was using. He says that blood is the harvest is awesome as well.
Thank you.
Um, the he used to. I mean, he used all sorts of techniques that just tortured himself, like for the sake of the movie, or
I,
movies.
I think at that time it was called mortician's wax.
Right.
Was they called it at that time was what became later nose putty or Stein's putty, whatever you call it. Yeah. I
I
have
mean,
seen the makeup kit because years ago, as you probably heard on this intro of this, we have Forey Ackerman. He recorded for me in '97, and of course, I first met Forey in '93 at a convention, and he had the Lon Chaney makeup kit in it. It was an awesome thing to see.
that is an awesome thing to see. Um, Wait, what was I about to say? Not about Lon Chaney. We're talking about the make. Oh, about just in the same way that like, in the same way that whether he used chicken wire or not, or whatever he was using, his techniques. I mean, you had who's the guy? Pierce, the guy who built up
Jack Pierce.
Jack Pierce. I mean,
Yes,
Jack
sir.
Pierce, every day Boris Karloff would sit for hours because Jack Pierce had to make up that skull, that chop top, whatever you want to call it, the flat top. He had to
Hmm.
make up that flat top from scratch, and he built it up with like cotton balls and putty and all sorts of jazz.
Amazing. Amazing.
It truly amazing, but like it's just crazy to think that like, if it was just a little bit more down the line, that he would find a way to like, that people would like, you create molds and stuff. And it just was before that time. They just didn't think that way, you know?
Yeah, I think by the time they're doing mid 40s, I want to say by the time they're doing the house film, the Monster Rally films, and I think in particular on Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, I think by that time they are using some pre-made appliances with his face, because you can see it changes. It doesn't have quite as much expression as it does in the first two.
Right. Right. I mean, those first two are just unreal. But to get back to La Belle et la Bête, that Beauty and the Beast film, I think Beauty and the Beast, my hot take is that Beauty and the Beast is the first Universal horror movie. Even just from like a story standpoint, like all of it, it's like the Beauty and the Beast kind of template in that same sort of dynamic. And that's why that film, even though it comes out in 47, which is, it's like kind of a decade late from the first cycle of Universal horror films, still feels like it's like a French Universal horror film to me. I don't know, a little bit.
I agree. I think I think they were sparse in their films. Well, it's a great fantasy film.
Yeah.
But I think they made Eyes Without a Face in France about 10 years after that, 7, 8 years later.
59
okay.
or 60.
Okay. I mean, there's
Great
much
film.
it is. And there's a lot of that Cocteau film with, I remember the arms holding.
Yes, the candelabras.
The candelabras out of the wall. And
Yeah.
I think that Roman Polanski borrows that for Repulsion with Catherine Deneuve in 61 or 62, whenever that was made, because she has the scene where she feels the walls are closing in about her and groping her, and there are all the arms coming out of her. I have no doubt Polanski was influenced by Cocteau and Beauty and the Beast.
But isn't that just in the same way as like with music? That's the beauty of like art in general, whether it's film, whether it's painting, or whether it's music, where you take something that came before and it inspires you to sort of like carry it onward and like incorporate it with your own flavor in your own kind of way, doing your own thing. And that's how like you get like interesting things, like in the sense of, I always like to use the analogy of the Ramones, who like they heard like, the Ronettes and the Beach Boys and like the Stooges. And then that's what, and you get stuff like Sheena is a punk rocker. You know what I mean?
I will tell you, I have a dear friend of mine, Metal Greg, and we have a discussion on this all the time, because I always tell him to me, and the Ramones are great, but I always tell them to me, they're power pop. They sound like the Archies to me, because my kids, I'd let them hear Sheena is a punk rocker when they were little, driving around in the car, and along with Sugar Sugar from the Archies, or something from the Partridge Family, or whatever, Dizzy by Tommy Rowe. It falls right into there. Now, would I let them listen to Bodies or EMI, like Sex Pistols, when they're 4 years old? Probably not. That's real punk rock to me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But that's power pop to me.
I'll push the envelope a little bit further for you. And apart from the subject matter, because obviously subject matter is different, but apart from the subject matter, I would say the same thing about like Walk Among Us, man. Like Walk Among Us with like some of that, not, maybe not like Earth AD, and most certainly not like Sam Hain or anything, but like there is a lot of Misfits that has a lot of sort of pop hook, catchy, anthemic, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Jeff, to me, it's all about the hook. That's it. It's all about the hook. Now, it's also about the groove. I love I'm a big Grand Funk Railroad fan. And, that was hooks, but it's more about groove. But I love hooks, things you sing along to. And I remember the very first time I heard Walk Among Us, that was the thing I came away with. I said, and I mean this as a complete compliment to Glenn Danzig, who I think is one of the great singers and songwriters we've had in many, many years. He's phenomenally talented. But I thought this guy sounds like a more muscular, powerful Jim Morrison when I first heard Walk Among Us, but with melody and with short, powerful songs.
Absolutely. Wait, I keep forgetting. I keep trying to like hold my next thought in my head, because as I listen to you, and then it slips out at the back door, and I forgot what I was going to say next. Not talking about Walk Among Us, we were talking about pops. We're talking about freaking Burn Witch Burn. That brings me to Burn Witch Burn. I want to ask you a question about this. This is my favorite Manimal song. This is like in constant rotation. You decided to remake this song for Horrorcore. You did Burn Witch Burn 2000, and you changed the arrangement. The something in the air only comes kind of like at like the break at later in the song, which I think is good, because I like both versions, but I think like it has far more punch. it has far more punch when you like leave it for the end, in the same way that like you have that break in Last Caress, right? Like
Sure.
it's sort of,
Sure.
you need silence. You need loud sound, or music is not just sound, but it's also silence. You need those dynamic pauses, and it has more impact when you just save it in the end instead of having it more repetitive in the original one. What made you decide to change that?
First of all, thank you. I'm honored that you put that in that same category or mentioned the same breath. I will tell you a song that's like that very, very much to me is You Gave Me a Mountain, the Marty Robbins song that Elvis made the greatest version of, because every version that Elvis does is the best. And he builds up to it, and at the end he says, "You gave me a mountain," and he climbs the note. I'm not going to attempt to do anything that Elvis has done, but okay. So here's what happened. You ever work with people collaboratively that you come up with an idea, and instead of them just working with you through your idea as good teammates are supposed to do, they want to drop in their thing so they can say they participated in the writing?
Of course.
Okay. All right. So that was that bridge that I never cared for, that I had a member at the time who was belly aching. He had to have that part in. It was really just to say we co-wrote it. We wrote that. No, I had a finished song. I had somebody. So I conceded. I said, all right, we'll throw it in there. And it always bothered me because I compromised on it. And what you heard about in the way we re-recorded it was the way it was meant. That was the way I had written it originally. So it always bothered me.
It works better, man. It does. It does work better. That's why I prefer that version. I like both. I really do like both, but that's the version that always sticks with me because it just has more impact at the end like that.
Well, thank you. And what happens is it's funny because anything I've done, I don't know if you do this with your film work, Jeff, but anything I've created, I only obsess on the things that I didn't get right in it.
Oh,
so it makes me, it's very hard for me to enjoy anything I've done. I have to do it and put it aside because all I hear are the things that I should have fixed. And so I guess when I listen to it, now that I have a little bit of some years between the first and the second, I can look at it now and say, well, that's 23-year-old me versus 37 or 38-year-old me.
Wow. Yeah, what you're speaking to, all the things you're speaking to, what you said before about someone else needing to just do, they need to add a little detail so that they can, feel part ownership of whatever, the thing is, as well as just sort of like dwelling on all the imperfections that typically only you can hear or see yourself. Nobody else. I'm not talking about you particularly. I mean, like in a generalization, in general, nobody ever hears. It's the audience or the people that take in the art. They never notice. It's just the creators, us creators. We hear, we see. And, one of my favorite philosophies in regards to making any kind of art, unless it's like doing like a podcast, if you consider that art, because once you're done with it, you're done with it. Especially if you're doing it live, like we are live on the internet, which is like, I love doing because it's kind of like a performance. But it's not so much as you finish something as you walk away and abandon it, because if you don't walk away, you will just, it's like with mixing. I do a lot of, I mix for movies. I don't mix for music, but let me tell you something. If I didn't have a deadline to get my last movie into the film festival it was in, I'd probably still be mixing it now. And it's like you have to get to this place where you're like, okay, the deadline is here. This is as good as it's going to be. If I keep doing this, I'm never going to make anything else. I'm just going to keep spinning my wheels. And what ends up happening is I'm so focused on making it sound better somehow. All I'm doing is I'm just scribbling. It's not,
I get you, because it's interesting. The last independent movie I worked on was done here in Northeast Ohio, and it has stalled out in the sound editing.
That's what happens, man.
There's a fantastic trailer on YouTube. It's called Tomorrow Echoes.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
It is I saw the rough cut. It was outstanding, but it has been bogged down, I think, in the sound editing. The gentleman doing it is a fabulous guy, and he's a perfectionist. And I said to him, it's that what's the old saying? Don't let the pursuit of perfect get in the way of
good,
or very good in the way of good, or whatever.
One of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's easy to get caught up in that. I mean, it only took me, 10 or 15 years from the first EP to the Horrorcore CD, and it took me another. And I promised me, I said, it will not take me another 15 years. It took me another 20.
It is what it is. I'll tell you something. I'm currently preparing. I just wrote what I'm hoping will be my third feature film. And I've decided I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I wrote the thing. I waited until I had written it. And then instead of, keeping it a secret, I'm sort of going to do the reverse, because what typically happens is, with when you don't have all the resources you need to do it the way that you hope that you can do it, you end up making cuts and you sacrifice on your vision just to get it done. And I kind of want the complete vision to be preserved before I go down that path. So I'm actually sort of doing an audio play of this screenplay for that specific reason. It's like, I'm not waiting until, because it'll probably be a year at least before I can even think about shooting this movie. I'm like, I'm not waiting. No one else is going to try and make this idea. I'm the only one that I know who will do it the way that I would want to do it. So I'm not really concerned about like any of that nonsense. Nobody gives a shit about what I do. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do an audio play version right here on the channel. And I have some people that are going to do it. So kind of just be like table reading. And we're going to try and it's going to be kind of like an audio play. And then the complete vision will be untouched. So no matter what I carve away, no matter what I, make compromises on, I know that original idea exists in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens.
Good. Best of luck with it.
Thank you. Let me ask you, I want to know, and we'll take some questions. I see Ramey is in the audience and Tyler. I want to ask you about your mantle. What the hell is this thing? I've seen every time I've seen like a picture of you on the internet or whatever, or what, that performance of you guys at Wacken doing Burn Witch Burn. I love that video. I've watched it a bunch of times. What the hell are you wearing, dude? What is this thing?
What? Oh, this?
Yeah, what is this thing?
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So I will tell you, I saw, again, I'm a comic book guy from way back. As a matter
Me too.
of fact,
I love comics. But go ahead. Yeah. Continue.
Here's a few I just picked up recently. A nice Fantastic Four.
Oh, what is that? That's obviously Stan Lee, right?
Yeah, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Joe Sinnott.
Oh my God.
Number 75. I'm big on 8.5. That's a good price points to me. Of course, here
you got
I'm doing show and tell right now. Every Spider-Man fan knows this is the comic Death of Gwen.
Let me see. I can't see it.
Oh, the Death of Gwen. I'm sorry, I got Milo.
Oh yeah, of course, the death of Gwen Stacy. Very important event. Yep.
And then everyone, and John Romita, who's my favorite.
That's great.
And then of course, I just pick up odd stuff I like once in a while. An old '60s copy of Top Cat. All right. Now I digress. What did I get on with Spider-Man? Or comic books. What were we just talking about?
Oh man, I lost. We were talking about. Oh no, your mantle. The
okay.
The thing.
In the 80s, it's funny. First couple of shows we played in the hardcore era, late 82, early 83. I mean, we had stupid outfit. I mean, it was just terrible. I was trying to figure out what to do. The other guys in the band, great guys, but they weren't sure about doing this. It didn't quite work with the hardcore thing. But I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So then we came in like 84, we started wearing these flak jackets, like motocross flak jackets with fur on them. And we burst out of cages. We had giant cages on the stage. It was pretty cool. And they were underlit. So we did flash bombs and all that other shit. And it was cool. Then when we came back the last time, I looked at it and I love the character Kraven the Hunter.
I love Kraven the Hunter.
Okay, this is inspired by Kraven the Hunter. I like
guys. Here's Larry in the thing. You're going to see it in this video right here. Go ahead, Larry. I muted it, but keep talking.
Oh, yeah.
Keep talking.
So and I'm wearing actually at that show. That's our last show. That was a good way to end. Usually I wore gloves for 30 some years, but I had gotten my wife got me a nice pair of replica 1968 Elvis comeback special leather wrist wraps that
Wow.
were from Graceland in 2011. I'd gotten the year before, so I wore those there. But yeah, this was, to me, that was what inspired. I wanted, when we came back in
Craven the
98,
Hunter, of course. Of course.
99,
Yeah.
yeah, with Horrorcore, we wanted to get rid of the cages. We came out with we had a whole cemetery set, and I had our drummer Dark, who was super creative guy, could build anything. He built, drew up a thing where we had cemetery gates. He made these things like they weren't like what do you call scrims. These were, we had to break our backs moving these things around because he builds houses. He was an interesting guy. He's a doctor, so he was a physician, went to medical school, also built houses, and he built all our props like they were meant to be on a foundation. So we had these giant Ken Strickfaden-esque lightning towers that were cue with the beginning and end of the set. It was really cool. And I wanted to do a whole reset. I didn't want to revisit what we had done in the 80s. So part of that was coming up with a new, a modified look or an evolved look for myself. My father-in-law, who's a super talented guy, restores old cars. Now, I'm not talking about 65 Mustangs that a lot of people do. I'm talking about 32 Rolls Royces.
Wow.
Old Jaguar XKEs, things like that. And he does the leather and everything else. So he fabricated this for me from piece of leather, put the stays in it. And I showed him a picture of Craven the Hunter, and we figured it out. So it's been around for about 25 years. It's indestructible.
Oh, it's freaking awesome. I was about to say, I was going to guess. I thought it was like it almost looks like football pads underneath. But what you just said makes it so much cooler, man. I mean, it really is rad. It's just like this thing. And I would have never, I just didn't occur to me. Craven the Hunter, of course.
Yeah. And I will tell you, that
go ahead.
Playing there, I had to leave because traveling to Germany, I couldn't put the head on it. That's my 78 Gibson Grabber with the sliding pickup that I've played for many, many years. But I had a giant gargoyle head mounted on the top of it.
Let me see.
There's the head.
Look at that.
There's that same base.
Wait, hold on. Wait, go back to the head again because your video froze up for a split second. Let me see. Wow.
They extend that thing Gibson Grabbers are. It's a heavy base. I put it this way:
how heavy is that?
Because they were too heavy for him, and he went to those other little bases that what do you call it? A Nobu bass, whatever it was he played. This thing weighs a ton, but it was an awesome bass, great sound, and that didn't make its way to Germany with us. It was too big.
Yeah, I mean, and plus you'd probably get like damaged or something under the plane or in luggage or some way. I know that's always like a headache for musicians and stuff in that kind of way. So when it comes to Kiss, are you like, and I have a Spider-Man question. I have a Spider-Man question for you, and I have another question for you. But when it comes to Kiss, are you like one of those Kiss guys that's like everything, or are you like die hard, like original lineup, like 70s Kiss, or where does your fandom with Kiss lie? I'm like a very casual listener of a couple of the hits, like Love Gun and Black Diamond and yada, yada, yada. That's where I begin and end. But where does your fandom lie when it comes to Kiss?
Well, let me think about it. I'll put it this way. I used to keep, because I collected comic books and different things, I always kept my stuff very nice. So I had all that Kiss stuff, those Grooves magazines with the fold-out posters, all that stuff. Those mega-sized posters. I've gotten rid of almost everything. I sold it off to collectors these past 5 years who were serious collectors that wanted stuff. It's all about the condition, Jeff.
Right, of course.
Condition. And I had great stuff in it all. So I've sold off most of the stuff. I've kept are the things that meant something to me. The very first concert I ever went to was September of 76. I saw Kiss on the Spirit of 76 Destroyer tour. And I begged the guy around the corner because I wasn't old enough to drive yet. And they played the Richfield Coliseum in September of 76 with Artful Dodger opening. Elvis played his last show in Northeast Ohio a month later. It sold out. I couldn't get anybody to take me to that because, again, I couldn't drive yet. So I missed the King. But I keep the tour program from that first thing, because the first time I saw them, I'm going to tell you, they were the greatest live band I've ever seen. Nobody to touch them when they were in their 20s with that set, with the Gothic theme, with Simmons in the castle turret. People who saw it, what happened was most people were introduced to them on the 78 Love Gun or Alive 2 tour with the big staircases, and it was all very lit up. Or they saw them in 79 on the Dynasty tour, which was on a big white stage that looked like it was more designed for the band Angel, who was big at the time on Casablanca Records. It got to be very Vegas-y. I loved them, but it wasn't the same. That first time I saw them, and then again in 83, I saw them twice on the Creatures of the Night tour, and it was too little too late, but they were great at that time.
I will say this.
A real band, not being a kid's band.
I will say this. We've done, sometimes we watch videos on YouTube, like we was just watching you guys doing Burn Witch Burn and whatnot. And I got to tell you, there's this DVD of Kiss without their makeup on from, I think it was the Animalized tour. And I got to tell you, like I said, I don't know. I don't even know like a quarter of the songs, but I love watching them live because they still, like, they're just giving 150% without that makeup on. They're jumping around. They're doing the synchronized thing with the guitar necks. And it's like it rides the edge of cheesy and cool. Like, like it's almost so goofy, but at the same time, it's like really cool to watch them do this thing in like synchronized way. It just kind of, I don't know why it works, but it kind of works. And I like watching it.
They were cool. And I'll tell you, well, everybody wants to see the end of Deuce with da 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 da.
Right. Or Black Diamond, that part in Black Diamond where they get down on their knees and Gene just goes, that's cool, man. That was from 75. Great. There's a great video of them on YouTube from 75 where they're doing it. I mean, this is like the 2 years into being Kiss, and you could see where they were about to go when they reached that Kiss fever in the late 70s.
Yeah, so that's why I say when I saw them that first time, they were still young enough and they were hungry enough. They were playing with the energy of the 75, but with the staging that was spectacular. I mean, it was absurd. It was dark. It was gloomy. That's why there's so very little video that's good of it that was shot. But what's interesting, what you just mentioned about the synchronized movement, I think there was a fellow by the name of, and my buddy Tim Drayle, Orlock, he's the Monster Energy guy. He has the job. He goes around with all the Monster Energy girls to the rock shows.
Wow.
So he was the guitar player for a long time. Wonderful guy. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was a fellow by the name of Sean Delaney with Kiss who was responsible for helping them with a lot of that choreography. But I'll tell you, when I was a little kid, I saw a band on TV that blew my mind, and in a way, it's Kiss-esque. I saw this band wearing Revolutionary soldier outfits, stand with the bass player and the guitar player standing on top of their amps, and then during the choruses, they would go up and down with the guitar necks. It was Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Oh, that's the Nuggets band, right? They're on Nuggets, I think.
I don't. They were on some TV show in the
60s.
Very little.
Yeah, but they were that was from the 60s, I think.
Yeah, like the house band. And then they had Kicks, and they had when they lost the outfits, they put out Indian Reservation in 1970 or 71, which was a massive, massive hit. Mark Lindsay went on to have the hit Arizona, which was a big hit from them. But when I first saw them when I was very little, they had those outfits on. I saw Beatle cartoons, but that didn't look cool to me. But I saw those guys, and they had these cool boots on, and they looked aggressive with the necks going up and down, and they're standing on their amps, and they had these hooks. That's when I first saw Kiss. They remind me a tiny bit of Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, there is something flashy about that choreography. I mean, even look at, like, again, to go back to the Ramones, just the simple act of pushing up, like guitar and bass, flanking lead singer and pushing up to the front of the stage and then pulling back. And even Jerry and Doyle were doing that in like 82, 83. You know, my Misfits fanaticism is like akin to a Kiss fanatic in the same way. I just don't, you know, so I understand it. I understand the Kiss fanaticism. It just doesn't click for me personally. However, I will say this. One of my all-time favorite movies. I have a lot of movies that I just love. Like, I don't have a singular favorite movie, although if you're pressed to ask me and you want to twist my arm, I would say Night of the Living Dead, 1968. But I have a lot of movies that I friggin' love. One of them is actually Detroit Rock City, and I'm very curious to know how you feel as a Kiss fan about Detroit Rock City. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think?
I have to confess to you, I know of it. I've never watched it.
Oh, Larry, you gotta see it.
Jeff, I have to tell you, I was a gigantic Kiss fan when I was 14, 15, 16. But I was 23. Hey, look, this was spectacular. Back in its day when this came out, this was a game changer.
Right.
Kiss
Is that alive? That's alive.
A game changer. But then I got older and I realized
you grew out of it.
This was a manufactured live album.
Yes, it was.
This Grand Funk live album was an authentic, real live album. It was pure. And in fact, the fella who recorded this remotely, Ken Heyman, he worked for Cleveland because these guys were from Flint, Michigan. They came down and recorded at Cleveland Recording. Ken Heyman went on the road with them and he recorded them at Shea Stadium. And I think it was Tampa, Florida, maybe, where these tracks came from. His son, and then he made money off. He opened up a place called Suma Recording. Many of the bands in Northeast Ohio recorded there. So I recorded with his son, Ken Heyman, was What the Blood is the Harvest, was the son of the guy. So we walk through the hallway and we see the gold records there of Grand Funk Railroad and James Gang. I don't care about the James Gang, but that's not my taste. But I saw Grand Funk. And in fact, I will tell you, I don't fancy myself much of a bassist. I punish the bass, like I punish the vocals. But I will tell you, when I walked in there, I'm 23 years old. I didn't know what the hell I'm doing. And I start plugging my stuff in, and he comes over to me and gives me a funny look. And I said, is something wrong? And he says, you want me to change something? He goes, no, I like what you're doing. It's wild. He said, you remind me of Mel Shacker from Grand Funk.
Oh.
I haven't heard anybody whose bass sounded quite like that. Because I put a lot of distortion on it, and I played it with a pick, and I played it like, that was my influence, more so than Gene Simmons, was Mel Shacker.
I have to acknowledge this comment real quick, and I'm going to tell a story only because Ramey brings this up. I was thinking if I was going to say this story to you or not, but I guess I'll tell it now as well. Ramey says, Jeff, fun fact, Ace Frehley lives near us. My mom was friends with his sister-in-law, and I used to go to school with his nephew. Used to bump into him at Sam Ash in White Plains and was at barbecues with him. So I used to know Monique, his daughter.
Oh, okay.
And what one day I was introduced, I was out somewhere. I was in White Plains, the place where Ramey is talking about. And I was introduced to a man named Paul. And I was like, hey, how you doing, Paul? I was sitting next to him, whatever, no big deal. And this was probably, I want to say this was 2004 or 2005 at the dawn, like the height of like VH1, like music programming. Remember when everybody was like watching VH1 and all the behind the musics and stuff? This was like the peak of that. And a program came on called When Kiss Ruled the World. And there was that guy, Paul, except his name wasn't Paul. His name was Ace Frehley.
Ace Frehley.
I was like, oh, I was like, holy shit.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy.
Stanley Eisen, and
yes, I know.
Actually, Paul Frehley.
I got to tell you, and whatever, however controversial, whatever, not to dwell on any controversy. I just want to say that I have a great respect. Love them, or they can be polarizing amongst fans. I have a great respect for both Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley in the sense that these guys were not only go-getters. Well, I mean, Gene Simmons is like, Gene Simmons' story is an incredible story. If you're familiar with his history,
yes,
it's an incredible, incredible story. But you know, equally as impressive is Paul Stanley. Dude's born without an ear, gets made fun of his whole friggin' life, and like somehow like overcomes like all of that to, you know, go out there and just, you know, rock people's faces off.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I want to be the Phantom in Phantom of the Opera because I like that stuff. He just did it. You know what I mean? Like just stuff like that. And I don't know. I gotta say, I really do admire that, even if I'm not a ginormous Kiss fan. I really appreciate that, those aspects.
There was magic with those four guys together, and even in different variations. I mean, yeah, I mean, what Gene accomplished coming in with his mother,
Unbelievable.
He's learning the language. I mean, it is just a abandoned mother in that era.
Yeah,
and to come over here and learn the language and everything. And I'm from New York City, and that's the big jungle. And those guys, I give them all a lot of credit. That was destiny.
Wait. You're from, you know why I knew you were from New York City, honestly? Because of the way you talk. I'm like, this guy doesn't sound like he's from Ohio at all. You don't. I was like, what? I was like, this guy's from the Midwest. This guy doesn't sound like he's from the Midwest. No, I never heard you talk before. That's crazy.
I was an unwilling hostage to being moved out here when I was a kid. Now I'm originally from the Bronx, and
you sure sound like it. You really do.
That's funny. Well, not that when I talk to my relatives back east, I'll tell you, I don't sound. They probably think I sound like absolutely Midwest, but I've been here for a while. And I lived in my 4 best years growing up as a kid were in a place called Old Tappan, New Jersey, upper part of New Jersey, across from the George Washington. Yep, Bergen County for sure.
Yeah, my mom's from Teaneck, and I'm from Westchester, New York. So, and that's where I am right now. So, like, you know, we're all relative, you know.
That was the best year. I absolutely loved them. We got moved out here. It was supposed to be for a year when I was a kid, and here I am. It's been a great place to raise a family, and my kids and my wife are awesome. I wouldn't have met them if I stayed back east, but I've never felt completely at home here.
I mean, that's what I mean, you take the guy out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the guy. It's just,
but that's not my home either anymore. It's different.
Sure, of course. I mean, like, you know, at some point, you know, this is going to sound really cheesy, and it is really cheesy, but it's true. Home really is wherever you are in a way. Like, you make a place, you stay at a place and you feel comfortable in a place. Like, you know, you grow to enjoy a place. That's your home. Like, yes, you can come from somewhere, and yes, never forget who you are, where you're from, and all these things. But at the end of the day, that's, you know, that's the truth. I want to change gears on you for a minute. I'm asking all this whole episode is just me asking his opinion on things, Larry's opinion on things, but I genuinely want to know. I was talking with Erie Vaughn from Sam Hain and Danzig, and I asked him, he hadn't seen it yet. I had just seen it, the Elvis movie. What did you think of being, because you seem like a real Elvis aficionado. Once again, another guy who I know some stuff about, but not really. In fact, Larry, don't judge me, but the first time that I heard, what is that? Is that the Blu-ray? I can't see.
This is Elvis, Prince from Another Planet. This is when they reissued all 4 of the 1972 Madison Square Garden shows. Unheard of. 4 sold-out shows in 3 days. I digress.
No. But so what did you think? What did you think of the movie? What did you think of him as Elvis? How did that all work for you?
I was prepared. Thank you for asking me that. I was prepared to hate it.
Yeah.
I really was.
Yeah.
I love it. And I went back to see it numerous times.
Yeah.
I went back, I think, 5 times. Now, the issues I have with it, I have a lot of issues with it.
Sure. I would imagine. It would be crazy if you didn't. I would imagine.
The first piece of it, and everything now with films, as you're a filmmaker, everything's about franchises.
Yeah.
The perfect franchise. This was a trilogy. It should have been a trilogy. They should have. Baz Luhrmann's spectacularly talented.
It could have been.
I love his version of Great Gatsby, Moulin Rouge. They're terrific. He was perfect choice for this or this. I'm glad he developed.
Could not agree more.
His vision is wonderful. His attention to detail, getting the period correct amps. You know, it is just, you know, Jerry Schiff's bass amp was odd. I forget what brand he had. He had to have that amp, at least the case, to make it look like it. Period correct Gatorade bottles. All this detail was phenomenal. but it should have been a trilogy. It's too big of a story to tell in 3 hours. It didn't capture and there's so many things that are important to who Elvis was that are missed. One of the biggest things that's missed with him was his philanthropy.
I
And
did not know about that.
Well, Danny Thomas, when we were trying to get St. Jude's Children's Hospital off the ground in Memphis, he went to Elvis Presley. When they were trying to get the USS Arizona Pearl Harbor Memorial built, they went to Elvis Presley. He gave and all the untold stories. The first time I went to Graceland before it was overhauled, there was a section before they redid it and they created the Elvis Presley's Graceland exhibit across the street. You went through this section. It was lined. Everything was wallpaper of canceled checks of charities he had made donations to just in his first year.
Wow.
From the minute the man made any money, he was giving constantly. That's lost, and I think that's an important piece because nobody else is like that.
I didn't know all that. I did not know that. Let me ask you this question. This might be a little controversial, but I'm curious to know. Another question as I was talking with Erie in conversation, Erie is a huge Elvis fan as well. And I was trying to tout the little knowledge that I thought I had about Elvis, and he corrected me, and I was pretty sure I was right on this. And, listen, he's way more well-versed in Elvis than I am. So what do I know? But I'm curious to hear because you're clearly an Elvis guy. Is it, Elvis it's known that Elvis didn't write songs, but he was a great arranger of music. And yes. It's my understanding that he had an arrangement where he would take a song and that he would take 50% of the publishing and he would give 50% to the songwriter, which in turn, because Elvis was covering the song, would be way more money than that songwriter probably would ever see without Elvis covering it. Was there any kind of arrangement like that, or is that just completely fictitious and not true?
That's certainly truth that I don't think it was in, and that's why his material started to decline. But
interesting.
But that's not him doing that. That's the Colonel.
Oh, it's the Colonel.
You have your mechanical rights, and you have your publishing and your songwriting credits and all that stuff. That's the Colonel's angle. That's why Dolly Parton held out "I Will Always Love You."
Yeah, she sure did.
Now, I will tell you, she sure did. She had the conviction to do that.
Yeah,
because she could sing it. Most people, I had an opportunity to go. I went to the 40th anniversary of his passing. My wife and I went to Graceland the second time we were there in 2017, and we did the candlelight vigil. We went up. It took us, I think, 7.5, almost 8 hours to walk up from Elvis Presley Boulevard to go up.
Wow.
Their respects. It was magnificent. People from all over the world gathered together. But during that, I got a chance to go to a show, a songwriters showcase with Mark James, who wrote Suspicious Minds, Hooked on a Feeling.
Wow.
Mike Lieber, who's from Lieber and Stoller. He's still alive. And Mac Davis, who was still alive at that time. Every one of them said the greatest compliment, the greatest miracle you could pull off as a songwriter was to have Elvis Presley record your song. That was it.
Right.
So we knew it's that whole concept of getting a little bit of a lot or getting all of something very small. Now, Mark James recorded Suspicious Minds himself. It sold 3 records. Okay. It didn't sell anything.
Yes.
Now, Mac Davis had a pretty big career when I was a kid. He was on TV, had TV shows, was in movies, had a variety. He had hit records. But he even knew. He said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "If I could get Elvis Presley to sing this," he wrote Little Less Conversation. He said, "I wrote that for Aretha Franklin. They came to me for a movie." He says, "No, forget it. I got an opportunity. It's going Elvis." Bob Dylan, who's not exactly my taste, has famously said, "What was the greatest compliment you ever received?" And he said, "The greatest thing was when Elvis Presley recorded one of my songs." So
crazy.
That whole thing with the publishing, but it's funny because Dolly Parton still talks about that 50 years later. So whatever money she made years later, she'd still be making a gargantuan amount, and she would have been attached to him forever and not have to tell the story. People would be asking her about it rather than her having to tell people about it.
Well, what's interesting, it is kind of funny in that she she did hold out, and everybody knows what ended up happening with that song. And here's my only question. And obviously this is just a what if scenario. It just like Marvel does the what if. That's something we love doing on that's something we love doing on this show. If she has Elvis record it, does Whitney Houston record it? Meaning, like, do you think it still has that? So then she would have made, I mean, she made a lot of money, but she would have made even more money. You know, at the end of the day, it's a sticky situation. And you know what else is sticky? Stickers. And the Frumess channel, is sponsored by riotstickers.com. We love Riot Stickers. They are the official sponsor of the Frumess channel. We are doing a very special deal, as you can see below the little ticker tape right here, where you can get 1,000 stickers for $79 at riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's FRUMESS. Link is in the description, along with the Bandcamp for Manimals. So if you're curious to hear what Manimals sounds like, go down and check out that Bandcamp as well. Check out the CD, Studies in Scarlet, as you can see right here, 1982 to 2018. But also check out the link for riotstickers.com, because Riot Stickers are the bomb. These stickers, they are printed on vinyl, which makes them waterproof. They are 3 inches by 3 inches, even though these are 2.5 by 3 inches. The ones that you would get were 3 inches by 3 inches, and they have a UV coating to really protect from the sunshine. So these things, they're going to last a long time outside, and they're going to last even longer on the inside. Let's play our quick 60-second commercial break video, and then we will get right back at it with Larry the Wolf.
We make stickers, banners, and buttons too, posters and promo cards. There's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com, Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
And we are back with Larry the Wolf. Manimals in the house. It's a full moon somewhere, and Larry, he is out. Blood is the harvest. Larry, let me ask you. I want to ask you one more thing, and then we're gonna dive. I want to dive in. I want to ask you some more stuff about other music. We're gonna talk about. I want to ask you what your feelings are about Berlin and Lou Reed. But
okay. I do want to make a comment on the last topic you did before the break, but please go ahead, Jeff.
No. Finish. Hold on. Before we move on, finish what you wanted to say about that last topic. Go ahead. I'm listening. All ears.
Two great examples of how a song would sell again. Elvis recorded Always on My Mind. Willie Nelson's biggest hit is Always on My Mind. And his other song was Walking After Midnight by the great Patsy Cline, who that's my second favorite of all time. I love it. And then the other song, Without You, written by Pete Ham from Badfinger, covered by Harry Nilsson in the early 70s, massive hit, 72 or 3. And then what's her name? Mariah Carey has a massive hit with it 20 years later. Great songs repeat, just like great movies.
You're right. No. Those are two great case studies that prove that what if scenario, it is very likely that Whitney Houston would have recorded it. You're right. I just mentioned something important. You always hear that thing about the people that are 27, the famous rock stars that died at 27. Yeah.
Okay.
27 Club. Yeah.
Yes. There's one that's always left out, and it's a tragedy. His name is Pete Ham. He was the songwriter from Badfinger.
Yep. The Ivies that turned into Badfinger. Yes.
Yep. Sadly took his own life. They had the biggest hit, massive record sales, was duped out of all his money, was so desperate, so filled with despair, and he left at 27. He's often overlooked, but it's funny. Almost everybody knows too. If they watched Breaking Bad, they heard Baby Blue at the end.
Baby Blue.
That's Pete Ham. That's
Now,
bad.
now, what a lot of people don't realize, well, some people realize, but so the producer of some of those Badfinger recordings is Mal Evans, who was breaking into producing, having come from being the Beatles' personal inner circle road manager. As the Badfinger was signed, one of the acts that was signed to Apple Records. In fact, another one of their hits was written by Paul McCartney. I forget which one, what it's called.
Come and Get It.
Come and Get It. Right. Come and Get It is
There
a Paul
it
McCartney
is.
song.
You can have
Yeah.
it. Da, da, da,
Such a
da,
great
da,
song.
da, da,
And
da.
just to think that Paul McCartney, and again, I cannot talk about the Beatles with you because in the way that you are a fanatic about Elvis, that is me with the Beatles. And if I say too much about the Beatles, then I will go off on a tangent that we will never return from. It'll be like entering the Phantom Zone, Larry, and we'll never be able to get out. So
We'll do that another time, Jeff.
Another
We'll do that
time.
another
Yes.
time.
Larry's going to come back on the show for sure. Larry's got to come back. But wait, what was I just saying? Oh, Paul McCartney in the year 1969. My goodness, not only are they making Abbey Road, but the dude is like, hey, here's Come and Get It. Just here, take it. That's going to be a hit. What is there? Mary Hopkins, Goodbye. Yeah, here, have that song. Like, and then on top of it all, George Harrison, he's writing something. Basically any song that's not written by Paul McCartney, they're like, Paul, do the bass part. And Paul subversively is writing his own song underneath their songs with his bass. His bass never repeats. You're a bass man, Larry. The bass never repeats, Larry. Come on. The bass never. It's crazy.
Paul McCartney's phenomenal talent.
Paul McCartney. But let's digress because if I don't, I do not want to be tempted. You mentioned the death of Gwen Stacy before. Yes. And the thing that I really loved about the last Spider-Man movie, of course, Gwen Stacy's death is a big thing in comic bookdom because it's this insane, it's the pathos that it gives to Peter Parker. The first great tragedy in Peter Parker's life is that Uncle Ben dies, and Uncle Ben dies as a result of Peter's, before he learns the lesson, what really means great power comes great responsibility and whatnot. The second lesson that's not as discussed as often is not a lesson per se, but the tragedy, I should say, is when the Goblin throws Gwen Stacy. This is for anybody who's not familiar with it. The Goblin throws Gwen Stacy off of a bridge, a tower. I don't know, Larry, you correct me, whatever it was, a bridge of some kind. And Peter fires his web slinger and attaches it to Gwen Stacy and makes a fatal mistake that he replays in his head for years afterwards, trying to figure out what he could have done differently. Because the irony is, even though it's the Goblin that throws Gwen Stacy off of the bridge, it's Peter's webs that actually end up dealing the death blow that kills Gwen Stacy. Because why don't you take it over, Larry? What reason behind it? What happened?
So it's interesting. I think Jerry Conway at the time was the writer, and he and Stan Lee was the editor-in-chief. I think Jerry Conway was the one that came up with the idea to kill off, because I know there was a comic book monthly or whatever about 20 years ago I have that has how did that evolve, that story, killing her off. Because anybody grew up on comic books, DC comic books, somebody died, they were in page 2, they were back to life on page 8. It just didn't, there was no continuity in that. So that was the thing with Stan Lee, is that they and I will say, I love Stan Lee, met him a couple times, got a chance to see him speak, and it was wonderful. But he did take a disproportionate amount of the credit from.
Oh yes, he did. He did.
The Gene Colans, the Jack King Kirbys, the John.
Just like
Romita,
with Bob Kane and Bill
Reese
Finger.
Chapman.
Just like with Bob Kane and Bill Finger. Same story.
Yeah. So I mean, he was the megaphone, and he was the
idea man.
He was
the idea man.
Idea man. Yes.
But then writers, the people that wrote the details, they slip through the cracks because he came up with the big idea. And then everybody else goes a wayside as a result, which is not fair. It's true.
Yeah. But so then the other side of it is, well, they wouldn't be Marvel without him. And that's true. That's true. So it was all, this synergistic.
All relative.
But the thing that I didn't see until years later is that it's written in there. You see the little sound effect written in where it says snap. and you see the still of Gwen's body hitting Limp. And then it wasn't until years later that I understood that what they were implying was her hitting the end of the web, not hitting the ground, caused her neck to snap. So to your point, Peter ultimately struggles with, he saved her, but he didn't.
Now, the reason why I bring this up is because Spider-Man No Way Home, and I know you've seen this, I'm sure you've had to have seen it. Was it emotional for you, or how did you feel when they sort of retcon? Because what they do in The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, they retell the story of Gwen Stacy. They recreate this moment, and I thought it was done, it was done okay. It was done, for whatever, for homogenized mainstream comic book audience. They did it. And we never got to see the end of that story. It always bothered me. And for them to not only allow Andrew Garfield to complete that piece of his arc, but in a way, they sort of did it for all of Spider-Man-dom, like, whatever the medium. How did you feel in that moment when you saw that? Were you surprised? Were you not surprised? Like, what did you think about that moment?
I have to tell you, I don't get disappointed by them because I care deeply about the characters. By the way, I love that you use George Méliès's A Trip to the Moon on your stickers and on your logo.
Thank you. Thank you. Love that. Love those movies. Yes.
The thing about it is that they have been losing me as a fan who grew up on Spider-Man with, again, the John Romita or Ross Andrew artwork, because they keep aging him in reverse. Part of the Marvel continuum was that the characters aged. I know it was slow, real time, but we saw Peter Parker go from high school,
you're right,
to college, to grad school, to getting married. Now he's aging in reverse, and it doesn't work for me anymore. I don't want to see Spider-Boy, and that's what it's become for me. So I try to enjoy the movies to the best that I can. It bothers me because they have such great blueprints to work from, storyboards, if you will, that have been done.
Literally storyboards.
F with it. Just do the damn things the way they were done. That kept the character alive for 60 years. So, to me, the best of all the Spider-Man franchise films of all of them is Spider-Man 2 with the
Sam Raimi.
I don't love what's his name,
Tobey Maguire.
I didn't love him as Spider-Man. It wasn't my thing. I wanted the John Romita drawn Peter Parker. I didn't want the Steve Ditko, and I know that's what they're going. But it worked. But I can't think of the actor's name who plays Doc Ock. They get him so right. Alfred
Molina.
Yes, he's spectacular. I love him in that movie. He might be my favorite of any of the movies as a villain. He has it. You have empathy for him. He's tortured. He didn't mean to be. I think that movie's great. The scene at the end when Peter is with Spider-Man is all the New Yorkers step up and say, "You got to go through me. You got to go through me." When he's on the subway or the train, that he stops, and they're saying, "We'll cover for you." That's such a. I mean, that's the essence.
That's the heart. It is because he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and here's the neighborhood returning the favor and sticking up for him in that kind of way in his weakest moment. Right.
And they capture an essence of the Mary Jane Peter relationship. So after that, I got to tell you, I enjoy the movies, but
you're a little turned off. You're turned off.
I don't want to. There's a reason why DC had Superman, Superboy, Crypto the Superdog, Supergirl. I mean, I don't want to see teenage. I understand it's like Lois and Clark and these other things, but I would like to see Spider-Man with adult problems.
Although I got to tell you, I agree with Raimi says that Andrew Garfield was a great Peter Parker. He's my favorite of the three of them. The middle one, the guy from the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the guy who's in the Gwen Stacy movie, he's my favorite that they've done live action with. I think he works really, really well for that age of Peter Parker. That age,
yeah.
By the way, you saw the things. If you look at the actual stickers, it's different from what's on there. I put my face in the moon I took my face and I it's public domain. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna stick my face in there. I might as well.
That's cool.
That'll be my crimson ghost. Is the moon with the that's one of my favorite images, man. I just love it. I think it's really, really spectacular.
Cool.
So let me ask you this. Let's talk a little bit about Manimals, and particularly the sort of like, not genre. I don't want to put like use genre words with you to describe your music, but like, it is interesting that like you're kind of doing, it's like, it's more metal based, but it's got a punk rock energy to it. It does not, it like, it would be wrong to call it metal, and it would be wrong to call it punk rock. How do you describe your music, or what's the best way that you sort of feel about that?
It's monster metal, horrorcore, beast metal, whatever you want to call it. All I set out to do, Jeff, was to write good songs and to have something to say. Now, I'll tell you, I hear some music and I think I try too hard. You know, I got an undergraduate degree in English. I like words. I think they should be meaningful. I despise lyrics that suck. They don't have to be magnificent, but I also don't want to listen to Harry Carpenter. What was it? What's that guy? I can't think. I don't want to listen to the record of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Doesn't have to be. I forget that guy's name who wrote that, but they don't have to write a dissertation. But I'd like the lyrics to be meaningful and to hear a hook. So the bands that meant something to me when I was a kid were the ones I heard. Like I said, Porter and the Raiders. And when I was a kid, I remember hearing Mott the Hoople, Slade. Those all had melody to them. And I try to play things. How I play them is I play them aggressively, but I write them just for the song, for the melody and for the hook and for the lyrics. So with that, I think one of the things that was intentional was when I first saw the Sex Pistols, because I thought at that age, I was at that age where music, I don't stuff like the stuff that was out in the mid to late 70s didn't speak to me. It just didn't work for me. And that was the popular stuff. But I heard God Save the Queen, and that was a game changer for me. And then there was a band called Stars who had a song called Cherry Baby. They were also managed by O'Coin, who was the kid.
Cherry Baby, like Cherry.
No. She's just a fallen angel. Boys in Action. It's STARZ. If you remember the actor.
All right, hold on. I'll go. Hold on. I'm putting that on my Spotify real quick, so I could or my.
So they did a song called X-Ray Specs on their second or third record, and you can hear. The guy's name was Michael Lee Smith, who was the lead singer. His brother was a guy by the name of Rex Smith, who used to be a movie star and a TV star in the late 70s. And then the guitar player had been in the band Looking Glass, who did Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, whatever was the movie or thing. They were a very, very good hard rock band of the late 70s. And they do a song called X-Ray Specs that you can hear him channeling Steve Jones on guitar and channeling Johnny Rotten on the vocal, but then they blend it with hard rock and the chorus. It's a great song. And I thought they're blending these two things together. Then I saw the Plasmatics in 81, and I saw them. I saw them in Detroit with John Beauvoir on bass, who was a spectacular bass player. And I think they only did one tour together with him. And it was Stu Deutsch on drums, Richie Stotts, West Beach, John Beauvoir on bass, and Wendy Williams. And they came out, they blew up the car on stage. I never saw so many police officers, law enforcement at a concert in my life. It was that wild at that time. But the difference was they were punk rock, but they could play. Their rhythm section was killer. Because I loved the energy of punk rock and go to hardcore shows, but I got tired of seeing guys that couldn't play for shit. I mean, at some point you have to have an amount of pride and say, well, I'm going to do this thing. Am I just here to do fun and games, or am I going to try to be somewhat good at what I'm doing? As a filmmaker, you can go out and shoot film, but at some point you want to start to create your language of film and
Absolutely.
make it meaningful. Okay. So what I saw was at that time, I saw all the guys I knew that were playing like metal bands. Their thing was I'm not knocking people, let's be realistic. So the guys in the hardcore bands had all this energy, and I loved the DIY, the do it yourself. I loved it. They weren't waiting for anybody. They do their own records, do their own 7-inch, little singles. They do their own flyers. You play in a whatever abandoned building, whatever it was. You did your own stuff. You weren't waiting for anybody else to help you with it. The metal guys and the rock guys were all trying to be like, well, I'm going to record a demo and I'm going to get signed. And no, you're not, because most of you suck and you can't play for This is why I love sports. Most of what I've gotten to do a lot of nice things in my life.
Yeah.
And the things I did, music's just a very small thing out of many things I do. The reason why I love athletics and sports is because it's a pure meritocracy. You find out real quick who's good and who isn't. Okay.
Wait, you said what? Wait, hold on. That word you said meritocracy.
Yes, sir.
That's interesting. I've never heard it put that way. I like that. All right, sorry. Continue. I'm listening.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm on a roll. So here it is. So, I mean, if you have, for instance, you have track and field or swimming and so on. It's in track and field, whoever ran the fastest, jumped the highest, threw the farthest.
Right.
Parents and everybody else can shut their mouths. None of it matters. My kid didn't do this. My kid should be starting, all that stuff. My kid's the best. No, it's not. Your kid just got his ass whooped. Her ass. That's how it works. It's a meritocracy. You earn your spot. And there's no question about it. With music or the arts, because it's art, it's however we perceive it. Now, you have all these
kids.
Subjective.
It's subjective.
It's totally subjective. And so you've got all these kids that they're told they drew a little bit. Everybody had a kid that liked to draw in school. I liked to draw in school as a kid and say, oh, you're really good. You're really good. And then you go to a bigger school and there's a lot of other kids that get told, you're really good. At some point, you're not all really good. Some are good and some aren't. And they have to look in the mirror and say, do I have what it takes? I tell people it's funny because I did a radio show with my friend Bill Peters a few weeks ago, and we were talking about this, and he asked me about, would it have been nice to have played more shows and all this other stuff? I said, sure would have. But I got to a level of, I like to say, we're such a cult band, such an underground band, we're almost subterranean. But what's funny is that must have been what my level of talent and ability was. I wouldn't give my life to it. So, because I had other things to do. I had other stuff out there. This was not because I didn't want to be like I know some of these guys that their whole pursuit of life has been playing in a band. And they were never realistic, and they didn't put the time into their families. They didn't put time into their education. They didn't put time into their work or their careers. They didn't put time into their own development in other areas. God bless them. If that's what they want to do,
right.
Great. But just don't be bitter with the world because it doesn't work out for most. It takes a supreme amount it takes talent.
Yeah.
It takes talent. It takes timing. It takes luck. It probably takes a little bit of divine intervention.
Yes.
All kinds of things have to align. And if someone is willing, that's why I love the fact that the Misfits, I saw that they just announced the Devil Man, Maurice, posted up, who's a great guy. He just posted up something about they have their 3 big shows that they just announced. I'm so happy for them. Proud. I see they had the talent. They had something unique. They had the songs. Mostly they have Glenn's vocal and songwriter, but they have the complete package to go out there. And that is such a cool thing. That's when you know it's right, when the talent does rise and gets recognized and plays an appropriate sized audience for what they've done. That's terrific. But a band I mentioned earlier, Stars, Artful Dodger, Mata Hoople they should have been gigantic. I mean, they're great bands with a lot of talent, but the timing. If Susie Quattro had come out in 1982 instead of 72, nobody would know who the hell Joan Jett was. She was just Susie Quattro 2.0, 10 years later when MTV hit. It's timing.
I got to tell you, well, first of all, Tanner in the audience. Hi, Tanner. Tanner says, and I totally agree. I totally agree here. Larry spitting the most honest take on being a musician I've ever heard. It's not just, I don't think it's just that. I think it's, I really think it's any sort of art form. And, you know, I can say this, like, sometimes you give it your all and you push and you push and you push and you hit a wall and you basically come to this. It's kind of like a crossroads, I think. And the crossroads is this, which where you really sort of like, you go two different directions. You either recognize exactly who and what you are and you accept it, and you can ask yourself this question: do I like doing this, and do I care what the outcome is when doing it? And if the answer is yes, I like doing this and I don't care what the outcome is, then if you hit a brick wall, you simply can keep going. You just can't move in the direction that you want anymore. You just, you turn right or you turn left and you go that way and you find another way to do the thing that you love doing and not caring about what the outcome is. And then you have the other people, or you have another type of person who gets to that same brick wall and they just stop and they can't move from their spot. And they stand there scratching their head and they go, what the heck am I doing? I mean, what the heck is going on? The world is not fair. Nothing is working. And, you know, that's the reality. And I'll tell you something. I'll tell you this. I will personalize this. I will internalize this a bit. My plan was to make, I wanted a body of films. I made my first feature in 2014 and I had plans, man. I wanted to have, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 films. Let me tell you something. As you are aware, it is not easy to make a feature-length film. It is not easy to make a feature-length film on a micro budget. It's even more difficult. If you want, you know what's funny? Anybody can make a film once. Anyone can make an album once. Look at the guys that do it twice. Because when you get to that point, when you get to the end and you go, holy shit, that was a lot of fucking work. And then there's a lot of people, they make one and they're done and they're like, that was good. I don't think I can do that again. And it's only the people that like literally like they put the backpack back and go, oh, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. And they go again. And if you could break through that second time, that third time, and that fourth time, you know, again, obviously like resources and money aside, because if you have money, it's a lot easier to do these things. But the point being is that like, it's like when you hit that brick wall where you can't push any further for whatever reason, whether it's talent, whether it's resources, whether it's life circumstances, you know, you have a family. After I made that movie, I ended up having a son, and then, you know, things change, lots of things change, and suddenly your priorities change, and, you know, you have to start making choices, and hopefully the right ones. And
because mature, strong men always put their families first.
Yes.
Or else you end up with,
that's right.
There's an awful lot of Peter Pan. There's a lot of Peter Pan syndrome going on in this world.
Yes. But here's the thing. So here's the thing with that though, like going back to that first category of person who hits the brick wall and goes, fuck, like I am exhausted. This is not going how I needed it to go or how I wanted it to go. I'm going to stop for a minute, or I'm going to take a rest. And then when I've had a rest, I'm going to stand back up, and I can't go this way anymore because there's a wall. I'm going to look over here. I'm going to see what it is. Is going this way the same as going straight this way where there's a brick wall? No, it's different, but it's still aligned with the goal or with the feeling, with the mentality. And here's the mentality that I'm referring to. I think of it as like a fiery passion to do what you want to do. As long as you don't let that fire die inside of you, even if you're not doing what you intended to do a decade prior, as long as that fire is still burning inside of you, then you have not given up, and you have nothing has stopped. You're just, and that's me. I'm talking about me personally. That's been my personal experience. And it's like, I'll tell you something. If you told me 3 years ago that I would be literally almost every night talking on the internet, I would have been like, that's not what I do. I want to be a filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker. I make movies. I don't do this. But I was like, I like doing this. I like who I am when I'm doing this. I'm going to keep going in this direction. And finding satisfaction and fulfillment in areas that I never would have intended if I just had that tunnel vision of going through that where I thought I was going through, but only hitting a brick wall. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's because it's another creative outlet, right? As you pursue
Yes.
one goal,
Yes.
your goals can change. It doesn't have to remain the same consistently. But I think what you're talking about is almost being compelled. You're compelled to do it. It bothers you if you don't do it, or you become an obsession with it. It has to be done. You have the creative outlet that has to be satisfied somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. Abso-friggin-lutely. And as you said, from what you've spoken of and the way you've spoken of, and I'll tell you something, I'm really not trying to blow smoke up your ass. What I see when you said the way that what you said, when you were breaking that all down, that's a form of humility, because you want to know what it is? You recognize who and what you are, and you diversify yourself.
Yes.
You diversify yourself, and you find fulfillment in many different areas instead of just this one little tiny little bullseye that you establish, that everybody establishes for themselves at some point in their life.
Yes.
And you will fall flat in your face. You will hit that brick wall and break your nose if you don't stop and look at it and go, whoa, and take an assessment.
We can use all kinds of metaphors or similes.
Right.
It's like tacking the sail. You tack the sail to catch the wind the right way. You adjust to life, because life is static. You adjust and you adapt.
Yeah, dude.
But I love there's a cool conversation, Jeff.
Yes.
It's cool.
I agree.
I knew we weren't going to just talk about just music stuff, because there's so much out there. There is in all different ways, and it's cool.
There is, and that brings me actually. You mentioned that you liked what I was saying about Lou Reed's Berlin. Are you're a Lou Reed fan? What you're a fan of Berlin as well?
Yeah. Yes, and I will tell you, you prompted me to revisit it. I got to show you when I go to the gym. One of my favorite shirts.
Transformer.
Lou Reed Transformer.
Hell yeah.
Of course. I also wear this once in a while. That's authentic. That's Big George Foreman from I saw he and Evander Holyfield 1991 Battle of the Ages. That's an old shirt. Of course.
That's cool.
On the best days, I'm that guy that never wears a Manimals shirt. And by the way, the name Manimals is a terrible name. It's a terrible name.
Do you know that there's when I tried searching Manimals, there's another band called Manimals.
Yeah, they could have had it. It was a bad name. It was a bad name.
Well, but the logo. So I'll tell you what your name is. Actually, it's not a bad name, Larry. It's a name that is accentuated by the visual logo, because the logo is cool as hell. The font, and what the problem is when you look at Manimals in like a plain Times New Roman font, it doesn't have the same bite as you go, whoa, look at this pink, look at this fuchsia here. This is crazy. What is this band? I got to check this out. But when you just see Manimals, you're like, wait, is that like a yogurt or something? Like it doesn't have the same, so it's not a bad name. It's just a name. No, but it's a name that is predicated on its cool ass logo to help accentuate what makes it great. And I think that is what you're really, what the real situation is.
That's very kind of you, Jeff. I appreciate it. And the logo I hand drew many years ago, because I didn't want to borrow somebody else's font. I wanted something to be my own. That name came about because I was highly influenced. I'll back up. So I said earlier I'd like to dabble with art and stuff. So I tried taking a shot at the early 80s. That was when comic shops started opening, and you had direct comics, no longer just newsstand.
Mm-hmm.
So these little independent comics labels.
Caliber
was one of them. E-comic. What was that one? Eclipse. There was another one that the Rocketeer came out on, and Jack Kirby and Eclipse.
I love the Rocketeer.
Oh yeah, yes. Dave Stevens, God bless him, what a terrific artist. So what I did was I loved the movie Island of Dr. Moreau, which was or Island of Lost Souls, which was the adaptation of Island of Dr. Moreau.
1932.
Charles Lawton. Yep. So I came up with this thing and I pitched a comic, set of comic pages I had drawn about a character, and it was Manimal. So it was a comic book character, and inside the booklet, my friend Argyle Goolsby of Blitzkid, super talented guy, he did all the layout for me. Wonderful guy. And then my friend Sean Vanek, who plays on this and who also is in the band Midnight and has his own band Vanek, he did all the remastering. So those two guys I had to say thank you to because they helped me get that across the finish line. But he included in it, there's some pages in it that show my drawings. Whatever that is 8x12 paper, those blue point paper, that I had drawn for the character. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. I went to a couple of hardcore shows. I thought I could do a band, and what if I made it? What if I looked that way? What if there were three of us that looked that way? So that's where it came from. It was an idea for a comic book that I pitched to a company called First Comics in Chicago. A guy by the name of Joe State. And he said, your anatomy is pretty good. You got to work on your backgrounds. Come back. Yeah. I drew those when I was 21 years old. And those were a couple of panels that I had pitched. And I thought, well, they're not interested. I'm not. And that was when I talk about meritocracy and talent. I knew I wasn't good enough. I was okay, but I didn't have special talent, and I didn't have the drive to work at it at that. I wasn't consumed with the idea of being a comic book artist. So I just pitched it. I did a little bit, and I thought I can do something else. I'd rather do it. I'd rather perform. So that's where that came from, and I should have changed the name.
I would like to amend. To touch really quick back on our previous tangent, I would like to amend one thing that was not mentioned. I think it's egregious not to mention it. This idea of what you just said, like the hard work aspect that goes in as well, because it is, yes, talent is important. Yes, good songs, good script ideas, whatever the case is important, but like hard work, showing up, treating it like a job is so much of whether it's successful or not. We're not talking about whether it's successful. We're just talking about bringing it to life is such an integral part of bringing it to life. You have to be able to put in the incredibly hard work, even when you lose sight. And the thing is, and I think this is maybe this is like the secret, and it's not a secret that anybody knows as it's happening. It's only a secret that maybe you figure out when you've got some years behind you, and you're like, you can see the bigger picture of it all. And it's this idea that it's all about the end result has to be about bringing the work to life, the fruition, bringing it to finding satisfaction in willing something into existence. Because that's literally what you're doing. You're taking something that's in your head, whether it's an art, a painting, a book, a comic book, music, or whatever, and you are working so hard to bring it into existence. And if you can stay within that cosm, then you will be very happy and successful no matter what the outcome is.
Yes. If you maximize your talent to the absolute best of your abilities, that's success. You measure success from your starting point to where you get to. And some people start, there's every wrestling room in the country, every junior high school wrestling program, you'll see kids walking around with a shirt that says, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Wait, whoa. Wait, say that again? Wait, one more time?
You've heard that one before, haven't you?
No, I've never heard that before. Say it again.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
100%.
And that is the truth, because there's a lot of lazy, talented people out there.
I love that. I love that so much.
Grappling and wrestling, or real wrestling. I love pro wrestling, but real wrestling,
Yeah.
submission grappling, all found me late in life, and I had a son who wrestled in college, so it'll spend a lot of times in the mat in the room and at meets, and you'd see guys walking or kids walking around. Every school would have that on the shirt. Very popular saying in the wrestling.
Wow.
Just like a very popular saying in the track circuit. I've got a daughter down at Marshall University. I was a javelin thrower down there. She very famous statement by the great Steve Prefontaine, who said, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. Everybody's gift is different.
Yeah.
To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. It's the gift of whatever you happen to be, whatever your talent, whatever your unique abilities are. If you don't do the best with it, well, that's a sad wasted talent, just like the movie A Bronx Tale, where he tells the kids, see, the saddest thing in life, see, is wasted talent.
That is, wow. We went deep on this one, kids, folks. We went deep on this one. Let me ask you this. To switch gears on you again, tell me again, because I'm just a ginormous fan of the Misfits. And when did you first become aware of the Misfits? And like, you ended up playing, you did a show with the Misfits, and you also did a show with Sam Hain. Tell me a little bit about that. What, any sort of, I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, the first I heard them, I think the Iron Maiden Number of the Beast album came out at the same time that Walk Among Us came out. I was in college, and should have gone into the service. I would have been a better fit for the service than college at that time, but that's another story. And my friend John Stainbrook, who was my first my pal in school and first drummer, he said, you got to hear this band. He says, you'll like this stuff. And I heard, and I said, I didn't like a lot of the other hardcore stuff. It all sounded very much the same. I liked the attitude, I liked the energy, but the music didn't really connect with me. But I liked the aggressiveness. I liked going to live shows, but I wasn't really crazy about most of the recorded records. And I heard Walk Among Us. I said, wait a second, this guy's got a great voice. There's hooks here. There's backups. This is different. And then John said, hey, they're coming. They're going to be playing in Detroit. So we went up to see them in Detroit. And on a Friday, it was the Henry Ford Museum. It was the same day they did the Why Be Something You're Not videotaping. I didn't get up there early enough in the day. I think John did. I didn't get up there. We went at night, met Jerry. We talked, said, hey, we're going to see him play Sunday. They were squeezing in this Toledo, Ohio show on a Sunday. They were going out to Chicago for Saturday, coming back to play in Toledo on Sunday. So I know that there was John and I. So that weekend we went up to Dearborn to see the Misfits with the big boys. I think we're playing with them. Then the next night it was the Kiss Creatures of the Night tour hitting Toledo, which nobody went to that tour. It was people didn't quite know that if Ace Frehley was going to be there or this other guy. Sure enough, was this Vinnie Vincent guy. It was very strange. But it was different. And John and I went to that. And I want to say, I think I remember Doyle might have said something to the effect of, I wish I could have gone with you guys the night before to see Kiss. I seem to remember that when I saw them Sunday night. Then they came back on their way from Chicago back, and we played a show in Toledo. It was us, the Necros, and the Misfits. And, we were in our infancy. I'm just trying to get an idea going on. In fact, there's pictures from that show where we had it was my buddy John. It was his Club Stain. It was an old I don't know, it was a carpet store or something in downtown Toledo. We put up a makeshift stage, and he had bands come through. So there was a drop ceiling with the metal, framework up there. We taken the panels out right above the stage because it was a little too low for me. And I remember 2 songs in, I had a Kramer 8-string bass that had a metal, because I was a big Tom Peterson Cheap Trick fan, but I couldn't afford one of those Hamer basses. So I found this Kramer thing that wouldn't stay in tune, and it was totally neck heavy. So it would go like that if I didn't hold on the neck, but it had a big, heavy aluminum neck. So I swung it up, first or second song in, it bangs into the metal stuff above. It goes completely, utterly out of tune. But so it was a disaster. But we had all kinds of energy. We played our 4 or 5 original songs. We played Strutter at the end or Come On and Love Me. The kids went crazy. We blew up a few bombs that were way too powerful. And I remember seeing All Robo had a big smile. He loved it. He loved it. You know, and everybody was very cool. They, you know, guys watched from the side. I remember they talked about they were going to play a show as to Maximum Rock and Roll. So we're playing with this band, Ohio. They blow stuff up and play a Kiss cover. But we were in an infancy. We really were. The outfits were terrible. You know, we had attitude. And I knew what I wanted to do, but we weren't there. It was our second or third show. On the other hand, the Misfits come out and they were a polished machine. They were great. They were terrific. Now it was everything was played 100 miles an hour, but it was spectacular. I mean, it was over the top energy. They were great.
I always, when I listened to bootleg recordings, I was not alive to hear these things. But when I listen to those bootlegs, I always think to myself that it almost sounds like it's like a runaway train that is barely like making contact with the tracks, like this like it's chaos, but it stays on the rail somehow to get to the end of the song. But like in the thrall, it's chaos. That's what I hear when I listen to those recordings.
They're cool. In fact, somewhere buried in my archive somewhere, I have a cassette of the show, and it's somewhere around. And it's funny because John Brannon came down, because Toledo was really more like a suburb of Detroit. And so a lot of the Detroit people came down, and John Brannon from Negative Approach got up and did a song with them. I remember that night. I forget what song they did, but they did a song together.
Can't Tell No One?
Yep, that's it. They did that.
Wow.
They did that. Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool show. They were, you know, there were kids there, Jeff, at the time who were into more the what would you call it? Like the East Coast, West Coast, whatever it was, Washington, D.C. type of punk. And they didn't get, there was some that would say like, oh, they're the Kiss fits, or they didn't like the image and they didn't like the logos and stuff. I said, you guys are out of your mind. That's cool. It's cool. They're packaging this, branding. That's what's going to be, that's memorable. People are going to get this. And, you know, I think I was right.
Well, let me ask you.
Most of those other bands nobody cares about.
Let me interject here. Even like at that, I'm asking you this question, like in the sense of like, if you like, don't like, I, you know, it's hard to talk about these things when they happened decades and decades and decades ago. But like, can you remember how you might have remembered like your reaction to the Crimson Ghost around that time, and maybe even after, a little bit after they broke up, and like what kind of you know, how it kind of played into all that stuff that you were just talking about?
The logo, the Crimson, the image and all that. Oh, well, because I had been, again, like a lot of kids, a monster kid of the 60s and 70s. I had the Famous Monsters. I knew of the Republic cereal and that image. And I knew the logo was taken from Famous Monsters magazine. I mean, I knew that instantly. Now, 90% of the other kids who were going to the shows didn't know that. But anybody who had been a Monster fan or grew up at that time knew it. And it was interesting because if you went an hour away to like Cleveland, there was no hardcore scene whatsoever at that time. So it was, you know how at different periods you had like a regional band. Like I know there was a band, the Romantics, that were gigantic in Detroit at one time. There was another band in Cleveland, or like Artful Dodger, I think they were from Washington, D.C. They were very big in Cleveland because Cleveland adopted them. There were bands in the hardcore cities that could pull shows. Cleveland wasn't one of them. I don't know if Columbus was. So you could be like an hour away from a city where they draw a lot of people to a hardcore show. An hour away, they don't even know what the hell those songs are. So what I do remember was an awful lot of people. You know, we got comparisons from a lot of times because of my hair on the one thing. The unfortunate thing was my hair was really, what I saw Brian Gregory from the Cramps Greatest Hits, where he's got the thing over one eye, and he came to one of our early shows. And someone said, oh, I saw this creepy guy walk by me, and he was, you know, he's a smallish guy, but he had a very, rough looking face, and he had white, and he had the big swoop, and he had whited out irises or contacts. I'd never seen that on somebody before. And he walked by me, and he was startling. I looked at him. Look at me. So what's up, cat? And he just kept walking along. But I knew somebody came over and said, that was Brian Gregory. He came to check you guys out. I thought you were a killer. So my hair was that swoop thing. But of course, like 5 years later, I was like, oh, it's that thing. I remember in the early 80s, everybody was getting accused with that stuff of being flock of seagulls.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
You
Flock
know?
of seagulls.
Yeah, people did funny things with their hair at the time. I don't know.
So listen, so if they have the devil lock, does that mean that the flock of seagulls haircut is actually an angel lock because it's blonde and I don't know. Angel.
I think it was maybe Squiggy or Lenny. Who was the smaller, the dark guy?
Squiggy, right?
I think Squiggy had the first one. If I remember, there's an episode where he's or Bowser from Sha-Na-Na, maybe. I don't know.
I got to tell you, man, I never, Sha-Na-Na has never been on my radar. And then one day I know that Sha-Na-Na, like if you grew up in the 70s, like that was a household institution. I mean, it was a variety show on national television, which at the time was, ingrained in pop culture. But like I'll be honest with you, I think Sha-Na-Na has not, with generations that have come since, like people, like you got to do a little sort of, it takes a little bit of mental power to kind of really know who Sha-Na-Na is. It's a name that's always been in my periphery, but I never really like thought anything about. I was like, oh yeah, didn't they do some songs on Grease? That sort of thing. And I'll tell you, there's what's the German program that New York Dolls and Ramones were all on? It was Micheladen or something like that.
Yes,
they did
Music
Laden. Right? Thank you. I was butchering it. And they had Sha-Na-Na on doing I Wonder Why. And I got to tell you, that slapped, man. I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. It was awesome, dude. They were performing. I was like, oh my God, Bowser and friggin' what's his name? Danny.
I forget the other guy's names. Like
the main guy, whatever the main guy's name is. They were phenomenal. And you have the husky guy that plays the sax, and they're doing this. They're doing this.
Oh, yeah. You know what's funny? It just occurred to me, Jeff. My buddy Tim Orlock, he works with the band Steel Panther.
Yeah, I've heard of Steel Panther.
Okay, sure. So you see them now. They look like an authentic, like a time capsule of hair metal from 1986 or 88, 5 or whatever. 88.
Right.
Sha-Na-Na was that time capsule, I guess, at that time that people, where there's American Graffiti, Happy Days, all those things that people had. Just like 20 years ago was the Wonder Years. Kids who grew up in the 70s, 20 years later, you want to see
first nostalgia. It's the first nostalgia wave for the 50s because rock and roll doesn't exist before the 50s, right? And the 60s are a separation and as well as an evolution of that 50s rock and roll that grows like an unwieldy amount of bamboo. Like it just gets out of control and indulgent and whatnot. And then two things happen in the 70s, or two things, and obviously it's easy to like think about these things when you sort of look back on history. Two things happen in the 70s. One, you have the first wave of nostalgia, and two, you have the sort of the first revival, which is kind of like underground punk rock, like this idea of like, we're going to return to the original form of rock and roll. Because at the end of the day, when you look at what punk rock was in the 70s, what is it but 50s, 50s rock and roll turbocharged at the end of the day.
Yes.
And the other wrinkle in that is I'm watching the Sha-Na-Na video and suddenly it hits me like a sack of bricks. I was talking about like favorite movies of all time. One of them for me, which borrows heavily from the second Phantom of the Opera, the one that's color, because the original Phantom of the Opera has a completely different plot. The Universal Phantom of the Opera, not the silent one, with Claude Rains, right?
Yes.
Claude Rains, where he steals the music. That's not in the original Phantom of the Opera. Was the basis for one of my all-time favorite films, Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise, which borrows from a lot of stuff. I have there's a poster of it right over there, and the band at the beginning in the movie is called the Juicy Fruits, and it never hit me because I did not really connect with Sha-Na-Na. I was like, oh, that Sha-Na-Na, the Juicy Fruits are Sha-Na-Na, duh.
Is that Paul Williams? Is that Paul Williams?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I know that. Yes, Paul Williams was on TV when I was a kid. He was on TV nonstop.
Right. Rainbow Connection, Battle of the Planet of the Apes.
He wrote the song Old Fashioned Love Song for Three Dog Night. So he was always go on, and a great songwriter. Yeah, I remember that movie.
Phenomenal. And he also did the voice of the Penguin in Batman the Animated Series.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was actually, I live over by Sleepy Hollow, like the real Sleepy Hollow, and in Westchester, and there was a Sleepy Hollow International Film Festival. They had Paul Williams was there in person with Phantom of the Paradise, and I got to see him on the stage. And I'll tell you, man, that dude's a friggin' that guy is like, holy crap. Like when you think about and again, talk about a guy who was like the hottest shit in the 70s. Like that dude was the dude in the 70s. So,
and I mean, he's a peculiar guy to be the guy, but he was trying to be the guy for it. He was a star. He was a legitimate star. He had something.
Right.
That's it. That's the thing about being compelled. I watched something the other night, Jeff, and again, it was based on your quick thing about Berlin.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention this to you because I think it's very interesting. Is that, and it's talking about somebody whose talent always shows through, and that's Bob Ezrin.
Right, producer, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Because a lot of what makes that record, you were talking about when you hear the kids' voices and how that's a hard. I will tell you, I listened to that album late at night with Caroline Says Too.
Oh,
sad song at the end and all that stuff. All that arrangement, that's Bob Ezrin. The children's voices, that's his touch. That's him. And let me paint the picture for you. Go back to Alice Cooper. That's Bob Ezrin. A Ballad of Dwight Fry. Mommy, when is Daddy coming home? Then when he goes into then when you go to when Alice goes solo, okay, and he has the Welcome to the Nightmare Tour, Department of Youth with the kids singing in the background. With Department of Youth, we got the power. Then in between, he produces Berlin for Lou Reed, brings children and all the orchestration. Then he goes over and does Kiss Destroyer. God. What does he do? On Great Expectations, you have the kids choir, and on God of Thunder, you hear the kids screaming in the background. He does it over and over again. He produces The Wall. I don't like Pink Floyd, but he does The Wall with
the kids singing.
That is Bob Ezrin over and over and over again. That's his touches, and in fact,
his gimmick is kids.
Yeah, well, that's one of his motifs he likes to go back to. So what do? On two songs, what do? I pay homage to something. I have The Symbol and I have Dead Man's Eyes. My oldest daughter at the time was about 8-9 years old. I have her doing a speaking part in that. That's the Bob Ezrin influence. I have another section of the song that's a direct. I will tell you, there's a song on there that has a reference to Neil Diamond, of all people, on it. But we can talk about that because Neil Diamond's cool too. Hot August Night, the first Neil Diamond's live album, is spectacular.
I'll tell you, I feel like you'd be into this, or at least you would appreciate this. I love. I know this is at the time, this was like the mainstream. So I guess maybe, for any punk rocker would kind of roll their eyes at it, but like now, or at least whatever, it doesn't matter. What am I talking about? Motherfucking Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell is like one of my favorite albums, man. And I got to tell you, I know that was like what was the mainstream thing in 77, 78, but there is nothing mainstream about how punk rock Bat Out of the Hell is when you think about the fact that those dudes were just going from record label to record label, just being like, and every record label was like, we're not going to record 20-minute like Wagner-esque, thank you. Wagner-esque, like, whatever you want to call it, rock operas about like Peter Pan and Neverland and whatnot. And then finding the dude who produced the New York Dolls to be like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do that. I'll record that in my studio. And then they're like, we need a motorcycle. And he's like, I'm like, I don't have a motorcycle. What do you want? For the revving the car. He goes, hang on a minute. He jacks into the board. He does DIs right into the board, flips a couple of switches. And then that motorcycle you hear on Bat Out of Hell is not a motorcycle. That's the guitar. That's a guitar, man.
Interesting.
Legendary.
I'm based in the Cleveland area, and that record and that artist is a big deal because I was on Cleveland International Records. The fella, I forget his name, who took a chance on that, and he went all in on that. The A&R guy went all in on that record, and Steinman, right? Jim Steinman.
Yeah, Jim Steinman, man.
Yeah. He had a vision, and he had the right guy to sing it. The guy from Rocky Horror, right?
Yep.
Who was also kind of a doo-wop, Elvis-esque, Sha-na-na-esque type of character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's kind of funny too. Like Jim Steinman is just like, when you look at, someone corrected me actually, because Bruce Springsteen is up there too, but like that, so there was some like meme online. There was like a picture online that was showing the greatest selling albums of all time. Yeah. And it was like, of all of these albums, it was like there were like 12 albums that are listed. Obviously that you got like Michael Jackson, Thriller's on there, and Sgt. Pepper's on, like all the big selling albums. Eagles are on there. And it was like highlighting the fact that there's only one album that was actually written by only one of these biggest selling albums of all time was actually written by one single dude, and that was Jim Steinman, man.
I didn't know that.
He wrote that music, man. He wrote the music, he wrote the lyrics. Meat was the voice, but Jim Steinman was the brains behind it. And a recommendation, if you've never heard it, any of you listening out there, we got to wrap this up because we're approaching 2 hours. And I want to thank Larry again so much for like just coming on here and just like chatting, man. It flew awesome.
By. It flew by.
It flies by.
And you know what? We didn't even talk too much about.
You'll come back, Larry. You'll come back. You got to come back, Larry. You got to come back.
Sure, I like to look. I love to talk. We talk about all kinds of things. I saw the thing when you opened the CD. You made the mention about the shot put. I appreciate it. That's very kind of you.
By the way. Oh no. Just to touch back on that recommendation. Jim Steinman's, because we're running out of time. Jim Steinman's on Bad for Good, which is Jim Steinman basically telling Meatloaf, we're not working together anymore. I'm going to strike out on my own and sing. And it didn't work out too well for Jim Steinman. Of course, it would later on, because again, it's the guy who wrote Total Eclipse from the Heart. Written by Jim Steinman.
Yeah. I mean, Steinman wrote all that. I just didn't know what that tidbit you just laid on me about. Of all those 10 best selling, that he was the only one.
He was the sole writer. Listen,
what's his face? I just know he was in that group.
What's his face produced it, and what's his face? Todd. Oh my God,
Rundgren.
Todd Rundgren produced it, of course, and obviously they had an incredible band, the Neverland Express, that played on it. But that was all that music was written by Jim Steinman solo. And that's what's amazing when you think about it. Even the Beatles, man, like the Beatles are the four, you have four guys, three of which are writing music. Ringo's not really writing music in the way that those other guys are writing music. Even although someone corrected me and said that Bruce Springsteen, who I know very, very little about, that he really could be credited with all the music on, I think it's Born to Run, which is up there.
I'm not, other than the fact that he has Elvis fan club on his jacket, and I'm not. I saw him once on New Year's Eve, 1978, when I was in high school.
Who, Bruce Springsteen?
4 hours, and it seemed like 12.
Really? Everybody's like, one of those guys just totally goes over my head. Just don't get it. I don't, not hating on the guy by any means, but just not my thing. But my recommendation on that Bad for Good album, and this is something you should listen to, Larry. In fact, I'll email it to you. You got to check out this monologue called Life, Death, and the American Guitar. And it's just phenomenal. And it's like a spoken word monologue. And they used to do it live. Yeah, they used to do it live in like 78 when they were touring the crap out of Bat Out of Hell. And God, what an incredible record. It's a 40-something minute record, 7 songs, melts your friggin' face off.
I think you like that album, Jeff.
I love that friggin' album. I do. Listen, let's go out on a note like this. I'm trying to think what's a good. All right. Top 5. Let's do Larry's top 5 music recommendations that you would not expect from Larry the Wolf.
Oh, I'll give you one right off the bat. Partridge Family Sound Magazine album.
Say it again. Oh, okay. Partridge Family. Okay.
Partridge Family, the Sound Magazine album. It is. I like most people didn't realize that was the L.A. Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine, and the rest
the
of them on
Wrecking
there.
Crew. Right.
You know what you basically had. Like people like the. I'm not a Beach Boy, so people think I know there was the album Pet Sounds. That's the one guy, Dennis, or whatever his name is.
Brian Wilson. That's Brian Wilson and the Wrecking
with
Crew.
the LA Wrecking Crew. Yeah. All these bands. Hal Blaine played on everything. You know, Joe Osborne. I mean, so though that is an LA Wrecking Crew. It's great songwriters. I'll give you another one. I mentioned earlier, Neil Diamond, Hot August Night, the first one. When he's miserable and unhappy and writing great songs. Before he started wearing the Liza Minnelli outfits and stuff, he was, he was cool at that time. What else? Again, I always got to go back to Elvis. Elvis, Prince from Another Planet that I showed you earlier. It's the 4 shows from Madison Square Garden. I heard David Bowie had flown over to meet his hero. There were guys from Led Zeppelin there that night. George Harrison from the Beatles was there at one of those shows. Everybody came to see the King in New York City. That's 3.
Yeah, 2 more.
Shit. Patsy Cline's greatest hits, because I love Patsy Cline. And it was just the 60th anniversary of her tragic passing. She passed at 30 years old in March of 63. She was traveling to play a benefit show for a country DJ in Kansas City who had been killed in a car accident. 18 months earlier, she had survived a near fatal car accident.
Wow. She
jumps in a plane to get home faster and never makes it home. That's 4. Let me think of what number 5 would be. Mott the Hoople Live. And a 6th one I would throw in, Grand Funk Live album. Again, Mark Farner is still playing. That would be the band I'd love to see. You know, some bands, the older I get, the music doesn't age well for me. But some of the stuff I like when I was a kid, Grand Funk gets better and better. I just wish that 2 guys weren't playing rib fests and would bring back Mark Farner and play together, because that's what people want to see.
Right. Bring back the classic lineup, or the classic players that make the thing in the first.
The guy who wrote 90% of the songs, they were magic when it's the 3 of them together, and then bring Craig Frost in the keyboard, and it's all good.
Listen,
that would be my recommendations.
I said that this is the end of the show, and it is the end of the show, but I realized there were 3 things that I really wanted to ask Larry about, and I cannot end the show without asking him about them super quick. So we're gonna barrel through them. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. These 3 things. All right, three more things, and I got
time if you got time, Jeff.
Well, you know what? I gotta wake up early. I gotta make the kids breakfast. I gotta make the kids lunch, and I gotta get them out the door for school.
Good for you. Outstanding.
So yes, but my wife is out of the country at the moment, so it's just me and the little ones, and I'm tired, but I live for this shit, so I'm here. And again, in talking about philosophy, when other priorities come up into your life, I love the philosophy that Charles Bukowski says. It's like, yeah, life changes. You take on a family, whatever. You have to work a job that maybe you don't want to work. Find a way to create in the spaces when you have time to do so. Do the things that you love in those pockets of time where you can do them. Even if it's inconvenient, even if it makes you feel tired, there's no excuse not to do it. Go and do it. If you want to do it, if it's something that makes you feel good, if it's not hurting anybody else, then take that time. That's what you got to do. You got to do it whenever you can do it.
I was doing 2 hours ago, since you mentioned your listing.
What?
Even though it's 40 degrees here, it was a nice enough day in Northeast Ohio. I go to the shot circle, because I just drew the USA Track and Field Masters Indoor National Championships, and I took 2nd. I'm chasing a guy who I'm going to see again in July. I got to make up the difference.
You got to make up the difference.
Some guys are built to show. I'm built to go. That's how it goes.
Oh, shit. All right, ready? Here's the 3 things. The first thing. Did you ever imagine, they're all Misfits related, or Danzig related. First thing, could you ever have imagined that friggin' Glenn Danzig would record Pocket Full of Rainbows?
I think it's terrific. Yeah, because
I love it. I love it. I'm a
yeah,
big
I do
fan.
too. I'm glad he went for songs that weren't the most. I love Glenn's voice. He's a wonderful talent. There's only one Elvis Presley, though. I mean,
Right, of course.
so it's taking on something very difficult, to do that. So I give him a lot of credit. He picked songs that he could add something to, and in essence make them his own, which I like, and I think that's admirable. And I think he did "Let Yourself Go," and a few others that were not. It shows the depth of his knowledge as an Elvis fan, that he didn't go for the big hits. He went for ones that it must have been he felt he could do something or have a reason to add something to, and I like that.
Second thing, what you played a show with the Misfits, but you also played a show with Sam Hain.
Yes.
What, in your opinion, your observation at that time, whatever, the change that you noticed from obviously it's two different bands, but just in the idea that it's like this guy is writing the songs and he's gone from this to this. What was your observation, or what were some of your thoughts about that transition? You did a show with Glenn Danzig who's in the Misfits, and now you're doing a show again where he's in this band Sam Hain, and the songs are different, the music is different. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, I admire somebody that's willing to recreate and do something, it took a lot of guts to let something go and rename something, get different people playing with them and the whole thing. That takes a lot of guts. That takes a great deal of confidence in your ability to say, I'm gonna come back with something different. There's some elements were the same, but I mean, it was still him and his voice, but it was a different style of music. I think actually, because he and I had kept in touch casually over the year, like that 2-year period between the first show to that show. And in fact, he recommended me to the place that I used to press the Blood is the Harvest EP. So, we had some conversation. We were close friends, but he was a cool guy. We talked a couple times on the phone over the year and a half, and we agreed to do a show. And he was going to do. It was actually the first show of their first season of the Dead tour. Was at the Pop Shop in Cleveland, underneath the original Agora that burned down. And I personally prefer the Misfits. If you ask me to choose, the others I prefer that style more. But I will tell you an interesting story that night. I think they had either a cousin or somebody, a guy named, I think, Joe, that was driving the van or something for them at that time. And he was talking to somebody that was with us and said, this is the kind of sound that I think Glenn's trying to go after, like a blending more of a metal sound into it. Because I will tell you, Jeff, if we were good or bad, that's for other people to decide. What I can say is that unequivocally, we were one of the first to intentionally blend hardcore and metal.
I would agree with that. I'm trying. I mean, literally, there's not too many other examples out there that I could think of coming afterwards. Like, it existed, but it was definitely seldom. And I can't think of anything earlier than Manimals, in all honesty.
Well, I think it morphed into things like speed metal, where they had the drum beats and stuff, but that's different. This was intentionally more like a punk rock attitude and some phrasing, whatever you call, with metal or hard rock trappings, and pushing them all into a blender and coming up with whatever we were.
Final thing, and the thing that kind of got us, brought us into communication in the first place. And I can't believe that in 2 hours and 8 minutes, this didn't come up once in conversation in any kind of way. We did, for those of you who are not aware, we did my friend Sharpie, who sponsors the channel with riotstickers.com. We had a riotstickers.com episode where we picked a topic of his choice, and we had this very sort of, again, doing Stan Lee Marvel what if scenario. And the what if scenario that he came up with, this, not me, was, who would you pick if Jerry decided not to sing for his version of the Misfits? If you could pick one person who was active at the time, you can't pick anybody. It has to be somebody who was active at that time, or what, like in the realm of of active at that time. Who would you pick to sing for your Misfits, sing for the Misfits. So it'd be Jerry, Doyle, a front person, meaning keeping the classic formation instead of turning it into like a 3-piece thing, and whoever for drums. And my number one pick was, in fact, Larry the Wolf. And the reason why I chose Larry the Wolf, I mean, look at all the reasons that make sense to have Larry the Wolf. It just, he is literally the perfect fit. And in a way, it's kind of insane to me that Jerry didn't even like that. There had to be some sort of like consideration or something. It's crazy to me that this never went down, because it would have worked. And I'll tell you something, I think people would have embraced what Jerry was doing, because a lot of people, he got a lot of heat for doing what he did and going off and doing a 3-piece and singing instead of doing his backing vocals, which is what Jerry was really good at, doing those backing vocals. It would have been a better received band had Larry been the one fronting it. And as it turns out, Larry had actually sang with the Misfits in the 90s, and I did not know about that. So my final question for Larry is, tell me about this show where you jumped up on stage and sang for them, and like, what was that like, and yada, yada, yada.
Well, actually, I was, first of all, thank you very much. That was very kind of you. We didn't know each other before that, Jeff. Somebody had contacted me and said, hey, did you see this episode of this fella, Jeff, that had this thing? And I'm going through. I said, okay, I'm going to get like an honorable mention. That's very nice. And then wait, he's the number 3, number 2. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you.
Credit where credit's due.
And I like your vision, because I didn't jump. What happened was I was invited. I had reached out. There was a guy by the name of Mark Kennedy, in
president of the Misfits Fiend Club in the 90s. Yes, I know Mark. Yes. I know Mark. Yeah.
Please give him my best. So what happened was,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. My email that you sent me to has 96 in it, because that's when I first got on email.
I figured that. I really thought that.
I've held it. So what happened? What's funny is, so I get on there, and I think Mark found me somehow. I don't know what it was, but he said, hey, do you know there's Manimals websites, fan sites out there? I had no idea. You know, when you do an independent record, you throw it. It's like putting a message in a bottle. You throw it in the ocean, and someone comes up to you years later and says, hey, I liked what you did. It's cool, right? Or you were terrible, whatever. But so I was just absolutely flabbergasted. At the same time, he gets in touch with me, and I'm pretty sure it was Mark, as I recall, and he said, hey, you know, they're coming back. Jerry and Doyle are coming back. And he put us in connection somehow. Jerry and I spoke a few times. I've got an old fax that used to come in like on those heated roll sheets or whatever. It says, hey, get in touch with Mark Kennedy or whatever. It's J.O. from the Pro Edge plant. And Jerry called me, and we were talking about, and I said I would, and I wrote him a note. I said, this is what I'd like to do. We had played years before together. At that point, I think it was probably 95. And he said, I'm going to do this again. And I said, I would love to sing for you if that's what you're going to do, but I want to do new material, because he had approached me about, let's take your record and we'll write a few. His words to me were, we'll take your songs on that. I like that Blood is the Heart. I like that record. We'll take them. We'll rework some of the lyrics. We'll put some more werewolf and vampire stuff in there. We'll co-publish it, and you'll be able to send your kids to college on it. That was verbatim. And I said, Jerry, that's cool, but as I'm very flattered. However, what I'd really rather do, if we were going to do this, rather than doing that, I would just rather write new songs. And they had found, he told me, hey, I found this guy. He's a young kid. He's good. But you're my backup. Okay, Jeff, I'm nobody's fucking backup on any fucking thing.
You want to know something? Okay, that's an amazing story. And here's the other thing. You know, this is kind of funny, actually. It's funny you say that, because when I was reviewing Blood is the Harvest in preparation for tonight, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening. I hadn't listened to it in a long time. I'm going, because usually I'll throw on something from horrorcore, especially if I want to listen to Burn Witch Burn, which is actually in one of my playlists that is in constant rotation. But I'm sitting there listening to Blood is the Harvest, and I'm going, Huh. You know, like the funny thing is, like picking Larry as my number one pick is that, there is a quite a little bit of overlap sonically with some of that Misfits 95 material and Blood is the Harvest. There is, because Doyle's guitar, listen, the Misfits in the 90s, yes, they sprang forth from the punk rock Misfits and whatever you want to, however you want to classify it. Again, trying to not interested in just dwelling on the controversy behind it, but just saying that it is what it is its own incarnation.
Yeah.
It is not like punk rock. It's metal. It's more metallic.
Yeah.
It is there's a metallic quality, which in turn, had they not gone with Graves and they had Larry the Wolf on the get-go, would have fit perfectly. It would have totally worked, dude. It would have worked. It would have been great.
It's very kind of you. And I will, as you well know, Blood is the Harvest was 10 years before.
So that's what you can,
in some way,
what you're saying tracks. What you're saying tracks 100%.
They certainly influenced me. They're a terrific band. Absolutely love when I walk around. And hopefully, maybe in some small way, just maybe influenced them a tiny bit when they made their comeback. And I will tell you, Jerry was great. He said to me, "Hey, come on down. We're going to be in Cleveland. Come on down and play the shows. We'll do a few songs." He said, "I really like the guy we've got." And I know they wanted somebody who was, I will say, closer in stature to how they had looked before.
Right, like a smaller guy.
Well, yeah. It looked, because I get it. It was great to have, one guy down the middle like snarling and deep into the crowd, and two big bookends. It was a great visual, and I think they wanted to maintain that. I'm the same size as we're all those guys. I'm just a little hairier, and so but I thought that's a very compelling look as well. And you saw the couple of pictures that are out there of it. Now, there was a videotape. Somehow the videotape disappeared, and I never got to see it. But, it was the right decision, because it was the right decision for them, because I was never willing to go all in. Jeff, I didn't sell as many records or do as many recordings or play as many shows as maybe I would have liked to have, but I got the best kids on the planet. And I've done some other cool shit. My life is not all music. I've done some other cool shit along the way. And my kids and my family is fantastic. And I'm not sure I would have had them if I had devoted the time it would have taken to get into the news. So I'm content with my things. And they made the right choice. They found the right guy for that worked for them at the time. But I'm very flattered that you thought it would be a good fit, because it would have been cool. And in fact, they came back to Cleveland a few months after that show, and something was happening. I think the singer was in jail, or I don't know what happened. He got into some kind of a scuffle, or I don't know what it was.
They could not go to Canada. He got into a fight. I think it was in DC, and he got arrested, and it was like a felony or something. He could not go into Canada.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a felony. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. I don't know any of that stuff. I don't know the details. I was doing my thing, and and I was relaunching, I was a few years into relaunching my thing at the time. And so I remember I went down to the show and I was talking to him, and Doyle said to me, "Hey, you singing for us tonight?" I said, because they never ready to sing. And I sure. But I think that there was some people, I think, in the camp. Again, Jerry and Doyle were cool with me, always great guys to me. I didn't know them well, but they're always very cool with me, as was Glenn. So I have nothing but good memories of any of those shows. It was a lot of fun to be on stage together with them. We did a few songs. It was dynamite. I would have loved to have done that show in Cleveland where they had fans singing. I think there was definitely a sentiment of some wanted me to do it, and there was maybe some people in the camp who didn't want me to do it. So that's good. That's fine.
I think, but a wrinkle that you did not touch on, or a detail that you did not touch on, is the fact that they also could mold Graves, or they intended to mold him as they wanted, whereas you are kind of like your own thing already. You are your own established thing. And this idea of like, hey, let's take apart something that you've already done. Like, hey, let's take apart Blood is the Harvest and reincorporate it into new Misfits. It's like, no, that's Manimals. I did that already. I want to write new things. It's like, it doesn't really jive with like, hey, we're trying to start over and we need someone that we can mold into our own sort of thing. So, I mean, it all water finds its level. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
it was. I was very flattered at the time, Jeff. It was great. It was fun to do with them, but they made the right choice for what their goals and objectives were for them at that time, and it wouldn't have been a good fit for me. But
it's still a great what if. It's still a great what if.
It would have been, yes. And I will tell you, the people who were at that show that saw us together on stage, that front three, I think they'll tell you it was pretty cool.
I bet it was. I hope that video someday. I hope that video or recording. I want to see that. That's something what.
It might be like London After Midnight. Maybe it's better to be a lost film because the people who saw it say it wasn't as great as it's become over the many years. When you see a movie that's been built up forever, and they say, I remember the first time my kids saw The Exorcist. I'm warning them. And they're like, yeah, it wasn't that scary, Poppy. But it's like the first time I saw Psycho when I was a kid. It was good, but it wasn't, didn't blow my mind the way.
Yeah, but that's just the natural reaction to things like, when you've been desensitized, or like newer generations are desensitized to things that had deeper cultural impact because no one had ever seen that before at that time. So it has, and what that does is it creates a type of trauma. Not like, I don't know, maybe trauma is not the best word, but like it does, like in the way of like, oh my God, that's like really, really scary. And then someone who, whatever, like, that comes later, you have your Jasons and your Freddys and your whatnot, you're watching Psycho and you're going, you call this scary? This doesn't scare me, because it's just not, it's not that it loses its potency. It's just that like things evolve and change. And that's just how it crumbles.
And we know too much. We know
too much.
It's hard not to see spoilers and hear things. And
that's just so right. You're so true. But I'll tell you, Night of Living Dead, to this day, that is a movie. Oh, if you don't know nothing about Night of Living Dead, you see Night of Living Dead, you are going to be gutted. That's why it's the GOAT to me. I'm like, that is the freaking GOAT. Last thing I want to say, piece of trivia, Nosferatu, 100-year-old movie. No, sorry, it's 100 year. Yeah, 100-year-old movie. Nosferatu. Maybe 101. Nosferatu, lost film. Bram Stoker's widow has all the copies torched because it is a takeoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yep.
And the only reason why it is not a lost film is because one print, a single print, survived, made it to America, wound up in a collection, and then every copy that we have of Nosferatu is a direct descendant of this one surviving print.
That's pretty amazing. And along those lines, I'm sure you're familiar with the 1910 Edison's Frankenstein.
Of course.
Okay, so that was considered missing in action for many, many years.
Right.
The guy who had the one copy, I think he was from Wisconsin, old Jones' name was Aloysius Detlef. I met him selling his little copies of that.
Wow.
In 97, I think it was, and he signed it. And then it became, but I think similarly, all known copies come from that.
Right.
One he had.
Yeah, the heritage copy.
He protected that thing for God knows how long. And I think he tried, and then he was selling it on his own. So I met him when he was very elderly at the time, and he signed it.
Wow.
It was very interesting, but it reminded me of that. It's not the picture Nosferatu is. It's not, Murnau is versus Edison's Frankenstein are two different.
You've seen Shadow of the Vampire, right? You've seen Shadow of the Vampire.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, yeah. So good. So great.
Yeah.
I want to thank Larry before I don't stop talking and then I stay up too late and then I can't wake up and do all the things that are required of me. So I am going to put a pin in it there. I want to thank Larry so much. We will definitely have him back. As I said, in the description of this video is Larry's Bandcamp. So if you are not familiar with the Manimals, if this is your first exposure to Manimals and you want to check out more, go down to the Bandcamp, check it out. I'm sure that's a lot of official Manimal sort of things. Check out the CD, Manimals. This is Studies in Scarlet. And you know what's really crazy? We didn't talk much about this, but I just want to say that this is a 2-disc. It's like a box set that all fits into one single CD. You got everything. You got the Horrorcore CD. You got the Blood is the Harvest EP. There's new tracks. You have Live at the Beachland Ballroom and rarities. It is absolutely something you should pick up if you have a chance to. Larry, where can people find this CD.
That's the only place right now is a Bandcamp. I made
The Bandcamp. So link in the description. Go to the description and you'll see the Bandcamp.
I like to write stuff and create stuff and do stuff. I'm not great at self-promotion.
Business. Yeah.
That's my, I have business, but I keep that separate. I do this as my creative outlet, and because I'm compelled. That was something, because I just had people that kept coming and say, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? I had to do that to put a final chapter on it. I think that's the final chapter. We'll see. But I did very limited run. I probably have less than 200 copies left of it. It's and if they don't dig it, it makes a wonderful set of matching coasters inside.
Yeah, well, listen, you got a really nice booklet inside with lots of pictures. It's literally like you can get the entire discography of the Manimals in one compact package, and that link is down in the description, folks. So if anybody really enjoyed this conversation, go check it out. Check out the Bandcamp. Follow Larry. Check out riotstickers.com. I'm going to thank Larry. Larry, hang on one second. I'm going to end the stream. Everybody, we say peace, hair grease. We'll see you next time.